I'll type with you.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, and we are setting up. So done redirecting. All right, we're live on YouTube, guys. Here we go. Have an awesome conference, and thank you all for joining. Connor, it's up to you, bud. All you live on YouTube, guys. Here we go. Have an awesome conference, and thank you all for. Should probably have just heard me.
Media is an essential part of today's world. At the University of Illinois College of Media, our students are curious and creative, innovative and engaged, and they're charting a bold new course. Working with our esteemed faculty, students learn how to ask insightful questions, gather and analyze evidence, and tell a compelling story through words, images, and data. The College of Media at Illinois is an exciting and collaborative place to be. Students run news broadcasts and publish articles, shoot and edit cinematic videos and documentaries and premiere them at our film festival, create strategic advertising campaigns for real-world clients, design virtual reality apps, and contribute to cutting-edge research. Through experiential learning, our students develop the diverse set of skills necessary to navigate the ever-changing media landscape. The College of Media prepares the next generation of leaders who will shape our fields and industries for decades to come.
This year we had kind of an interesting last couple months because we were, as you're well aware, forced to shift to online.
We've changed how GMI works online, obviously, but we've still been able to put out pretty consistent content. Our last show was actually full length, and our past ones were actually pretty decently stocked with news. And the dedication of our news anchors and our reporters was really what helped us keep it together.
I think that it really changed the way that we viewed our stories and how we conducted the class.
We were handling the transition to virtual pretty well, I think.
For Good Morning Illini, this whole pandemic shifted our focus to online, which is honestly important still with or without, social distancing. And so it's always good to have a website and to practice these kinds of skills. And so we made a nice central website for Good Morning Illini production. And I feel like this is something that we needed, a year ago.
Our anchors couldn't be in the studio, so it did have a very much a YouTube-y feel. But, I mean, you're getting that with shows like John Oliver or Trevor Noah or Jimmy Fallon. A lot of these online shows are having that same feel. So we were at the same quality level as those shows.
So we had some really great stories that came out of it. We had Jared's, which was on online learning, and we had Jose's on small businesses and how they struggle to stay afloat. And so while this was problematic at first, I feel like we rose to the occasion and made a really good semester out of it.
And they produced some really interesting blogs and some really interesting segments that were, not what typically GMI sees, but were still kind of really documenting how the COVID-19 was affecting their lives, and by that, everyone's lives, really.
With all things, we try our best, and we can only adapt. And that's what they teach us in the University of Illinois.
Yeah, and that's kind of how GMI is.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome to everybody. It's a different way to meet, but this is the way life works these days. I want to make sure to welcome everybody today. I'll introduce our panelists in a few minutes, but I also wanted to say very important 3 letters, ILL. Yeah, I know that's hard to join with mute and unmute these days, but everybody needs to keep that in mind. Just a couple of things. My name's John Paul. I'm a retired University of Illinois journalism instructor, taught there for 20 years, had a life in TV before that. And I'm proud and honored to be able to kind of be the moderator. I think of myself as the conversation traffic cop today, to kind of direct traffic so that students, recent alums are able to hear what our alumni and expert guests I have to say about the job market out there, about what decisions you may be thinking about in the upcoming months. Couple of things. The goal of this today is just to help you as the class of 2020 and say from the last 3 to 5 years out there. So the expertise they share is specifically for you. The other thing I'll tell you, if you need to ask a question, want to ask a question, please go to the Q&A part of Zoom and ask your question that way. You can also, I think, find a way to raise your hand and we'll recognize you. This idea, by the way, to do these virtual conferences was Ken Erdy's idea. Ken's hidden at the moment from the screen, but Ken came up with this idea, and he's you remember that scene from The Wizard of Oz where the guy was behind the curtain, you know, making things happen? That's Ken today. So a lot of credit goes to him for coming up with the idea, lining up our some great guests today too, experts today. I want to just talk directly from my position to the class of 2020. You guys have the most unusual end of your 4 years of any class probably in the 150-year history of the university. You're not only doing online classes, if I'm correct here, you missed Mom's Day weekend. You're going to miss commencement. You'll still get a diploma, but probably by the mail. And help me, grads, doesn't that come in about July? Is that about right?
Sounds about right.
Yeah. So it'll be a while before you get the diploma. They want to make sure you paid all your bills before they send you your diploma. But you guys had a basketball team that almost went to the tournament, did earn a trip to the tournament, but didn't get to go there. You had a pretty good football team. You had a lot of things going right, and then COVID changed all of our lives. And frankly, has changed a lot of what you're going to expect as you go out beyond the University of Illinois and commence your career or life after that. But my thanks to our panelists today, and that I guess is the biggest part of this. Let's get to them right away. So let me briefly introduce them. I'll let them talk a little bit more about themselves, and then we're going to get things started. First up, Andrea Darlis, who is an anchor, reporter, host at WGN Radio in Chicago. And Andrea, you've been there just a few years, right?
Yeah, I have been, well, I was at WGN Radio for 22 years and left full-time last year to come work for the University of Illinois. So I work for the chancellor now in public affairs, media relations. Before this, I was setting up a few guests for WGN Radio, incidentally, for tonight with our experts. But yeah, and I continue to be a fill-in host at WGN Radio, WCPT Radio, WBEZ, different stations around the Chicago area hosting for radio.
So you don't get radio out of your blood is what you're telling me.
You never do. You can never leave.
Okay, let's go back to the college days, Andrea. What'd you do in college? Were you WPGU? What'd you do?
I was a WPGU alum. I was at Quad Day my freshman year, and I saw the WPGU van. It was 107.1, but it was a rock and roll thing back then. So it was 25 years and still rocking back then. And I know I'm completely dating myself right now. So I was at the Quad Day and I saw someone in a cow suit, because that was their mascot, dancing on the van. And I thought, that's where I want to be. That's what I want to do. And I always knew I wanted to be a reporter. And I was going to major in journalism, or I was in pre-journ at that time, because we had to go through liberal arts and sciences before we got to the College of Media, which was then College of Communications. So I auditioned for WPGU, survived the audition and was on the dormitory broadcast system for a semester. And then second semester of my freshman year, I got a shift. It was 3 to 6. And I thought, this is fantastic. It'll work out perfectly, 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. And the news director said, no, it's really 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. And I wanted to be on the radio so bad. So I thought, I have to do this. So I called my mom from my landline in my dorm. And I said, I got this shift. It's 3 to 6. And she said, oh, great. She was along my previous thinking in the afternoon. I said, no, it's 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. She said, well, you're not going to do that. I said, oh, gosh, no. And hung up the phone and called the program director back and said, I'm in. So that was my start at the U of I at WPGU. And then junior year, I interned for a station called WLRW, which the great Melissa Foreman, who you'll hear from in a little bit, was working there. And all of the young journalists, the young female journalists, wanted to be Melissa Foreman. So it was very cool to be able to work with her in Champaign. And then the next year I went for a solid, strictly all news internship at DWS under the guidance of Robin Kaler, who I guess my life and career has come full circle because she's now my boss again. So that's 22 years condensed into a minute.
So what you're really telling us is a cow made a difference in your career.
Yes, it did. A dancing cow, dancing
Okay,
on the piano on Quad Day. And they were playing a Black Crowes song, so.
Let's go to Tim Dittman. Tim, any cows in your past that led to your interest in radio?
No.
You're a U of I alum. Did you work at WPGU?
I did, yes. I spent many days and nights at WPGU and doing some work for the Daily Illini as well. Yeah, just like Andrea said, I mean, that station gave me so many opportunities. I did a lot on the sports side. I started in news, but you know me, JP, I'm a sports guy. So I transitioned pretty quickly into sports. I got to host a sports talk show. I got to be a part of the live broadcast for the Illini Club hockey team. And then I wound up essentially overseeing radio sports for my junior and senior year. And at the same time, getting to be a beat reporter for the football and men's basketball team, and getting to travel the country following the football and men's basketball team was an incredible life experience. So that was one of the big ones I did in college. And then the BTN Student U program was also another big thing that I did in college. And I know maybe a lot of our participants today are involved in that, or at least aware of it. It allowed me to do play-by-play for pretty much all sports across the board at the U of I. Including a very infamous game where the men used a women's basketball for about the first 7 minutes of the game. And that broadcast is on YouTube if you want to go and Google it, if you want to do a search for that. But so that was an incredible opportunity as well. And then right out of college, I was fortunate enough to get on at where I'm at now, which is WDWS in Champaign. It was a station as a diehard Illini fan that I grew up listened to Brian Barnhart do the calls of the football and men's basketball games. And now I'm working alongside Brian. I do a combination of news and sports. My 9-to-5 job is in the news department. So I am a reporter, and then I anchor newscasts throughout the day on all three of our stations that we have here under one roof. And then I do some sports work as well, helping out with the Illini football and basketball broadcasts. And then just this past year, very cool opportunity that I'm very grateful for. I was named play-by-play voice for Fighting Illini Volleyball. So I did that this past season, and crossing our fingers that we'll have a volleyball season this fall. I'll be doing that for years to come.
So Tim, no doubt in your mind that WPGU made a difference in your career.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like I said, I spent as much time there as I did in the classroom. You know, the learning by doing part of it. You can learn a lot in the classroom, but actually getting out there and, you know, being in front of a radio board and talking into a microphone and going out and perfecting your interview skills. I mean, WPGU is maybe things have changed since I graduated about 9 years ago, but for me, it was, you know, really one of the few outlets that I could take what I learned in the classroom and actually apply it in real life and you know, learn by doing, like I said, and get better. So yeah, WPGU was incredible.
All right, Melissa, you're up next. Melissa Foreman is a broadcaster, host, jack of all trades, currently at WLIT in Chicago. Did you at one point leave radio and then come back, Melissa?
I did. You know what? When I was in Champaign, I had an internship with you, JP, in the gang at WCIA. And then I was also at WLRW and WPGU. So I wasn't quite sure where exactly it would take me, but then I fell madly, madly in love with radio. And Andrea, we were talking about this earlier. Once it's in your blood, it's in your blood. But I did go for 10 years and did a television show that I loved and adored, very similar to the radio show, but obviously just visual. So they were very comparable, but I did do both. Yeah.
And in school, you said WPGU. Did you do DI? Did you have other activities that were media related?
So I did, no, I never did DI. I did, again, I went to the basement of PGU. I did not have an air shift, but unlike Andrea, I owe my career to Bart Simpson because I was an intern at WLRW. They were looking for someone to do the voice of Bart Simpson for a commercial. The Simpsons had just come out. And somehow my Aunt Lindy came out of me. And the next thing I know, I was doing Birch. Hey man, sure, dude, what's going on? And, everybody perked up and that was it. That entire day started my entire career. So that's how it happened.
Listen, there are times when I look at Chicago radio that you and your program are #1.
That's Christmas. And I'll take it. I'll take it. Yeah, it's a crazy busy, wild, volatile field. I'll tell you that much. But it's so much fun. I love it. You got to be willing if you get into radio to be, seeing those ratings on a daily basis, and you have to just be willing to go, okay, that's today. What's tomorrow? And move it. I take #1 the same way I take number, 10, 20, or 15. But we're hanging in there.
Okay. Brian Moline, next, radio host, reporter, anchor, WILL AM, Urbana AM 580, I believe it's called, Brian. Brian, you're the only one among us who is not a University of Illinois alum, is that right?
Yeah, that's right, John. I went to school at Truman State University in Kirksville, and I would say that I did have some similar experiences to the Illini grads here. I did do some work for our campus radio station there in Kirksville. To be honest, where I gained the most experience, though, was working for a smaller commercial station in Kirksville, Missouri, where Truman State is located. I worked there doing a little bit of everything my junior and senior years. I did some board operating for Cardinals games, satellite programming, all sorts of stuff in between. I did some DJ work on the classic rock station there. I was a reporter. I was an anchor. I hosted a community affairs show for several months. And at the end of my tenure there, I was actually the interim news director as a college senior, which was an interesting experience. But yeah, it was Truman's a smaller school. It's about the size of EIU, just to give you an idea. But good experiences there, and getting that hands-on experience there in Kirksville really helped a lot.
But like our other panelists today, no doubt that college radio did put it in your blood and it stayed with you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, my first 2 years on campus, I hosted, I had a 2-hour show Sunday nights where I played jazz. It was kind of on the weekends, it was kind of just variety of stuff on our station where people could play what they wanted to play. And I had played in the jazz band when I was in high school and had an interest there. So I did that show. And then as I moved along, there was some opportunities for me to do a little news and sports on the campus station as well.
And you ended up at WDWS, where Tim is at some point in your career too, right?
Right. Yeah. Right out of school, actually, my wife and I moved to St. Louis for 2 years right after we graduated. And I was out of radio for a couple of years, moved to Champaign in 2000 and still had the itch. And it didn't take long to know that for the type of broadcasting I was interested in, news, sports, that WDWS was the place to be in Champaign-Urbana. So I cold called the station one day and just asked if they needed any help of any kind. And it just so happened they were looking for someone to operate the board during their Saturday Sports Line talk show on Saturday mornings. And they used the same computer operating system that I had used at the station in Kirksville. So I had some familiarity there. Went in, had about a 5-minute interview with the GM at the time, and had a part-time job. So juggled that with my full-time job at the time. It took about 5 years, but I did get on full-time at WDWS. Worked overnights there for, thankfully, only about 9 months before I got out of that. Then I did a little bit of everything while I was there. I did hosting of call-in shows after Illini football and basketball games. That was kind of my first real foray into consistent on-air programming there. I hosted a news show in the afternoons. I did some anchoring on election night there. I did some sales. I did production work. I learned the traffic system, scheduling commercials and everything. So a little bit of everything there.
Well, let's get your comments for the classes now for students. Given what's going on in the world today and the economy, I'd like to hear a little bit shortly what your view is. What's it like out there? What do you think? What do you suggest to students that will be applying for jobs? How do they make themselves, as one of our panelists or attendees has asked, how do they make themselves stand out? And are there jobs? So I'll let whoever wants to jump in do that.
I would say, if I could just, I'll start it. I would just say, make yourself, I guess the word would be available in all facets of journalism. I mean, it used to be when we had graduated, it was either radio or TV or print. Now digital, as we're seeing and living, is the way to go. The more well-versed you are and the more multifaceted you are in writing, editing, radio, television, being on camera, using your phone. I know I'm throwing a lot out there, but it used to just be one or the other. But now I think you can really show your worth and your value if you could do just a little bit of everything, which I think we as journalists are kind of trained to do anyway. I think that would be my advice.
Okay.
I think, I'm going to piggyback on that. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. To go with what Andre was saying, I would, my number one thing would be, listen, guys, everyone that you see that has longevity in this business has learned to adapt. And what you're seeing now is an opportunity for you to adapt and to move and to pivot. And you do it in a creative way. You find your niche, your niche. This is what you're good at. You've grown up with this technology. This is your chance, really, not to sit around and go, oh, this is your chance to show everybody how it's done the new way. And every single one of us, every single panelist, we've had to learn to go from tape to this, to reel to digital, and that's how you thrive. You thrive by adapting. So while you're sitting at home thinking about where is my next job, you're going to sit at home and say, how can I show them the way of the future and what the next job should be? And that's what I would do when I was, at home. Go for it.
Tim, Brian, anything you want to toss in?
Yeah, I'll piggyback off of what's been said so far. One of the big lessons I learned was to go outside your comfort zone. As I mentioned at the very beginning, I was a hardcore sports guy. I want to do sports reporting, play-by-play out of college, and it's either that or nothing. Well, now my full-time, I do sports on the side, but my full-time 9 to 5 is news. And so I remember very vividly Nancy Benson sending me a very polite but firm email saying, Tim, you need to go outside your comfort zone and you need to report and turn in assignments on something other than Illini football and Illini hockey. And so I did that, and it worked to my benefit because my portfolio was able to grow. And once I applied here at WPGU, at the time it was a news opening. They weren't interested at all in my play-by-play and my sports acumen. So I was able to show them that, hey, I can cover a city council meeting. I can cover a police protest. I can cover XYZ just as good as I can cover an Illini football and Illini basketball game. So go outside your comfort zone and broaden your portfolio. So no matter what opportunity comes up, you'll have something that demonstrates your value. The other thing, and again, it's kind of a piggyback on, what's been said, who we're talking to today, the younger generation, I'll just be kind of bluntly honest here. When I got on at WPGU, my boss, Carol, who JP, was a lot older than me. And so she wasn't necessarily in tune with some of the new technologies, new ways people were communicating. And so I would routinely in our morning meetings come to the table and say, hey, I've got XYZ story idea. And she'd ask me, well, where'd you find that? Where'd you find that? Oh, I found it on Twitter. I found it on Reddit. I found it on such and such social media. That wasn't even on her radar. Not that she's a bad journalist, but just she comes from a different generation. So she wasn't in tune. She wasn't constantly checking Twitter and Reddit like I am every day. And so that, again, will demonstrate your value, whereas other reporters, might just be looking in the traditional areas to find story ideas. You can be coming to the table and saying, hey, I found this creative thing over here, and you might be the only one coming to the table with that particular idea. And so that's going to demonstrate value to your employer.
Brian?
I hope I didn't tick off any of the old people in the room.
Certainly not me, Tim. But yeah, the more versatile you can be, I think the better in this business. I think most of you are probably gotten comfortable working with video. The more comfortable you are on mobile audio and video platforms, the better. The more ways you can get your audio and video from point A to point B, the better. As far as the technology goes, and then as Tim mentioned, as far as story ideas, don't be afraid to pitch something new and different. If you can bring something unique to the table that really helps you stand out, amidst a bunch of applicants. And let's face it, at this point, there's probably going to be a lot of applicants for the jobs that are out there. That's kind of where we are right now. So whatever you can do to make yourself stand out with unique ideas, with different platforms that you're comfortable with, the better off you'll be.
Melissa, you were the one who brought up that great 3 to 6 a.m. shift that you brought up. We have a viewer on YouTube today that wants to know if you're willing to work those very early morning, very late night shifts, are you more likely to get a job in today's environment?
I think the thing is, like we've all said, is that the more willing you are to do different things, the more, apt you are to be accessible. So, I find, morning show the best time ever. It's quiet, it's peaceful. I see the sunrise. It's been great for raising all my kids because I've had this, balance in my life. Sometimes when something's presented to you and it seems like the most awful thing, think twice. And especially in this day and age, it might work out to your benefit. So if you have to work 3 to 6, I remember having a conversation with Deborah Norville when I was in Champaign, and I had to call her for one of my projects. And she said, listen, Melissa, I'm gonna be real with you. I've had to move 20 times. I've had to live in small cities. I've had to live alone. And I remember thinking, that won't happen to me, and it did. It happened to me. But you know what? The ride was worth it. Stories are worth it. And take it. Take what you have to do. I graduated like you guys, and I was like, "Woo, I'm out of here," and I was ready to start my life. And a job opened up back in Champaign. In my mind, that was the last place I was going to be living. And I will tell you, 5 years after living in Champaign as an adult, full time, they had to literally drag me kicking and screaming out of that town because I felt so in love with it and I felt at home. So yes, take whatever you can. And to piggyback also real quick, I want to let you know, as I've been sitting here too, doing things, not only just in the regular medium of radio and television, but there are going to be large organizations that need help, and you have learned how to tell stories. And a lot of them have no idea. I mean, they just don't know what they're doing. They're just scrambling to stay afloat. You have an opportunity now. Is it your local floral shop who has no clue how to sell flowers in a digital video world? This is what you're made. This is what you just went to school for. You have, it's not smaller. Your world just became bigger because you should be proficient at it and ready to go. So I highly suggest, don't just look at the regular, I'm going to work on a radio or TV station, but I'm going to go work for my local, I'll be the rep for whatever large company it is, or my local company, and I'll tell them how to sell and put videos together and a story.
We have a question too, to all of the panelists about, do you do podcasts, and how do you make your podcast stand out from everything else that's out there?
Not currently podcasting, although I did co-host a sports and culture podcast for about 2 years after moving over to WILL called The Bandwagon. And I'll say it's certainly not easy to stand out in the podcast world right now. I think just about everybody seems to have one or has had one. I would say that definitely kind of practice some things on your own before you really throw it out there a little bit, and just kind of get comfortable. But try and find something that is something you're passionate about, one, and something that maybe is a little unique, where certainly there are a ton of coronavirus podcasts out there, as you might expect. Is there a different angle that you can find on COVID-19 and coronavirus that no one else is doing? Or is there something that you're interested in that you haven't been able to find a podcast on for whatever reason? Find your own niche, find something unique that I think will help it stand out. And I think the biggest thing that I would say is, when you're ready to finally start producing episodes, just make sure you put in the groundwork ahead of time, do your preparation. The last thing you want it to sound like is that you just opened up the mic and started talking and it doesn't really go anywhere. So just make sure that you've got it planned out, the flow. If you've got guests, make sure that they're comfortable in the podcast realm. A few tips anyway.
Anybody else want to jump in on podcasting?
I would second what Brian said too. There's so many podcasts out there right now. I mean, a lot of what we do, just being in radio, is podcast, and it's out there. And I have a SoundCloud, and there's just, I don't want to say it's oversaturated right now, but it somewhat is, because think of yourself in your own life. What do you listen to? I love Ronan Farrow. I loved Serial. There's certain podcasts that I listen to, but now everything is COVID related, and it's good. It's a little bit of COVID overload right now. So yeah, look for different facets, different angles, if you will, too. And I would echo the sound quality. I did a Zoom meeting last night with a friend who was a teacher at a broadcasting college, smaller broadcasting college up here in the suburbs, and her sound quality was terrible. And we were teasing her. We were saying, "Oh my gosh, we can't even hear you, let alone how are you teaching?" So yeah, all of the little things really play into it.
We have a question again to panelists who says, "I love radio, but my dad keeps telling me it's a dying industry." Dads tend to say that about whatever we went into. Are there still opportunities for me, and are they on air?
Well, I'll say, before I was doing television before I went back to radio. I had the same thought as your dad. I was like, nobody's listening to this. But I will tell you that radio and terrestrial radio is very healthy and very alive, because they still find that localism is something people care about, especially in a city like Chicago. We don't have movie stars. We grew up with our radio personalities, and we feel connected to our local stations. And that's not just, the 25 to 70 to 100-year-old range. That's even young, KISS FM, which is a part of my iHeart company that I work for, is thriving and healthy and alive with 18 to 24-year-olds who still listen to radio. So I would tell your dad, that any opportunity would be great. But to piggyback on Brian and Andrea, with podcasting, we want you to make a living, right? You have to live and pay bills. And so I would tell your dad, if you have a chance to pay the bills or podcast, it's a tough thing to break into podcasting and to, rise to the top and make money on that. And that's a very long thing. So don't ever leave radio out. It's,
Tim, is it a dying industry?
No, it is not. But to the second part of the question, the on-air opportunities, you will probably have to wrestle with the reality that you may not be able to jump right into your coveted on-air shift right away. It's like any industry. You have to work your way up the ladder. I started part-time news, and now I'm full-time news and getting to do play-by-play. So you just have to be patient. And again, I'm not telling you, something that our attendees probably don't already know, but you have to be patient. You have to be willing to work hard. And what I have found is, if you see an area that your organization is lacking, just do it. If you say, hey, our social media presence, should be beefed up, just do it. That's what I did, and my efforts were appreciated, and people will applaud your initiative. At least that was my experience.
Okay, we've got a question from a current student. Actually, I guess he graduated in December. Gavin Good is on the line, has a question about podcasting. Gavin, you want to go ahead?
Sure. Hey, everybody. I'm Gavin. I launched my own podcast in the fall actually, and I've like been experimenting, with guests and like what the best sort of time range is. And I'm wondering if you guys think there's sort of like a golden range of time for podcasts in general, and maybe if like, there's dangers of going too long at times.
I think going too long can definitely happen pretty easily. WYLO, where I work, is an NPR member station, and they're one of the leaders in podcasting. And I would say the majority of their podcasts tend to fall in kind of three lengths. There's kind of these daily quick hitting podcasts. They have a couple examples are they have a coronavirus daily podcast right now. They have a podcast called The Indicator that's about economic issues. Those tend to be about 10 minutes or so. They're kind of quick hitting, one guest, get in, get out, and you're done. They have podcasts that are a little bit longer in kind of the 20 to 25 minute range that kind of take a little bit of a deeper dive into a particular issue. Those might have multiple guests. And then there are kind of weekly podcasts that they do that tend to be kind of in the 40 to 45 minute range, kind of a weekly roundup kind of thing on different topics. They have a pop culture happy hour one that would fit that bill. One called It's Been a Minute by Sam Sanders that would fit the bill there. And those tend to be the most common lengths they have, kind of 10, 20, 40. They don't do much that's a lot longer than that. I know some folks, do podcasts that are longer than that and have success with them. I think it's going to be difficult for you to get people to listen to the whole thing if they go much longer than that, though.
Okay, we have another question for you. This one from Alex Aguilera, who has a question about, I think, podcasts. Alex, are you there? And go ahead.
Yeah, hello guys. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Cool. So yeah, my question is, I guess, sort of like, show prep, like, what's sort of, the process of, preparing for shows? Do you sort of just go with, I don't know, do you kind of plan ahead, like what I assume, or do you kind of just roll with what's happening, in the news that day? Like, I don't know, what kind of goes into the show prep day in and day out?
I'm going to turn to Andrea Darlis first because she just lined up interviews.
I did.
Are you your own producer?
That's an awesome question. So I've been a news reporter, a news anchor, and a show host. And what I have learned is that, at least in my experience, you can never prep too much. You have to be prepared for your guests. I do act as my own producer a lot more often than not. I'd say about 90%. And I'm about 90% of my own producer. Yes, because I want to have control over my guests, who I'm having on. I start from, if possible, I try and, work as far in advance as I can, keeping in mind though, that of course there's breaking news, things change. Look at the world we're in now. Things change on a dime. Something that Governor Pritzker said yesterday could change today at 2:30 in his daily briefing. So prep as far in advance as you can, as much as you can. Know your subject. It's National Nurses Week. So I was booking a couple of nurses for a couple of shows tonight too, giving the host background, not only on the guest per se, but know about your topic too, because it's going to sound terrible if you are on the air and you start asking questions that you don't know the answers to. And also, that being said, I would say always listen to whoever you're interviewing, listen to what they're saying, because all too often, and we've all heard this, you'll be driving wherever and the host isn't paying attention. The guest will have already answered the question and you'll re-ask it in a different way. It just kind of makes you look a little foolish. So I would say too much prep is not even an option. I mean, just prep as much as you can, but have the flexibility, of course, to change on a dime if there's breaking news.
Melissa, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I would say the same thing. And, know as much as you can about lots of different things, Alex. Even if you're not thoroughly interested in, let's say sports isn't your thing, know a little bit about everything. So if you walk into a room, you could have a conversation with any single person in it. And that means, on the daily is being up to date, as Andrea said, what's going on. And I would also add, when you do have a guest or somebody you're about to talk to, try to think of that one question or that one something that's out of the box that connects you with that person that will make that interview unique. whatever that is. Is it a game? Is it one question? Is it something you guys have in common? You know, it takes the guest by surprise and sometimes makes them feel more comfortable with you. And then you wind up getting better content out of it. But it's on the daily. I mean, I do morning show, but it's like 24/7. The family thinks I'm texting people, but I'm online. Like, what, you know, what's happening now? It will only make you better at what you do, and give you the ability really to talk to as many people as you can.
Tim, when Brian Barnhart has come to class, he's always showed us his preparation for basketball and football games. I'm assuming you got to put a little prep in before a volleyball game too?
Yes, I, like all of our other panelists, am a firm believer in over-preparing. Notes upon notes upon notes, to where you're prepared for any situation that might arise, whether it's the bench warmer who is not expected to have an awesome game and goes out and scores, 30 points, and you can talk about their history, or if there's a power outage in the arena and you have to tap dance for a half hour. It can never harm you to have enough notes. Now, I would caution is if you prepare like I do, I often fall into the trap of trying to shoehorn every little last note in. You have to accept the fact that you may prepare 2-3 pages worth of notes and show prep, and you might not get it all in. That's okay. There will be other shows, there will be other interviews on that specific topic. The other trap that I tend to try to not fall into is, okay, let's say I'm having a nurse on for Nurses Week, or maybe that was a bad example, maybe like a prominent politician. And, I will search and see what interviews that person has done lately. And it's very tempting to look at those interviews that maybe they did a week prior and say, oh, that's a good question, I'm going to ask that one. Well, no, because you're just going to be a repeat of the interview that was just done a week ago. So I think I think it was Melissa who said it, is try to come up with unique and new questions that will leave your audience going, I learned something today. So
break new ground.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Okay.
like with what Tim said there, just to jump in real quick. Sorry, John, but on that politician answer, listen to the answer that politician gave to a question a week ago. What questions come out of that answer? What did they not say that you want to hear? Did they not touch on something that you wish they would have? And just don't ask the same question, but get some new information out of them if you can.
Okay, we have a very patient Justin Malone who has asked a question from watching our YouTube feed. Justin is the new news director at WPGU. He's a sophomore.
All right.
He would like to not only connect with you in terms of ideas and suggestions, but he's also looking for, how do you advertise or get word out about your podcast? What's the best way, tips or ideas for going, hey, I got a cool podcast, listen to me?
Boy, if you figure out how to go viral, let me know. No, I think just be good at what you do. I know that's a simplistic answer, but be entertaining, be knowledgeable. And I think if you do that, people will latch on to whatever product you're selling.
I think one thing to try and do if you can is at some point, if you're able to talk with someone that has a pretty sizable social media following, if you're able to get someone like that as a guest, and then essentially piggyback onto their following, that at least is a good way to kind of get your foot in the door social media wise, if you can.
I mean, can you use social media?
Yeah, I would absolutely say put it on your Facebook, your friends, have your friends blast it out.
Twitter, Reddit.
Yep, Twitter, Insta. I mean, anything. I don't even say TikTok, but
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you can always get Melissa to do a TikTok for you.
Yeah.
No. Melissa to do a TikTok for you.
I'm up for it. Don't tempt me.
We have another question. Jared Farmer, who I think is about to graduate, has a question. Jared, go ahead.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, Illini. So my question for you guys is, so I haven't necessarily decided like which avenue of journalism I want to take yet, between like broadcast, print, digital. like I kind of made it a point to stay as like well-rounded as possible. But that being said, like when I want to tell stories, I want to tell them like in a way that captures like people's emotions or feelings or like whatever they're talking about. So I was curious, how did you guys like immerse yourselves in stories that you have to do, and how do you get, or how do you guys put yourselves in positions when interviewing people to really get like their true feelings and emotions out of them when they're answering questions?
Oh, that's a good question. I might start with that, Jared. First of all, I want to tell you, I know it's hard when I don't know about everybody else, but when I went into broadcast journalism school, went downstate, I thought I was going to be an actress. Then I thought I wanted to be a news broadcaster, but I knew there was a goofy side of me that if something went wrong, I'd be the first one laughing under the desk. It would be terrible. So it's okay to not know exactly what avenue you want to go through, because you're going to change and evolve, and you'll find whatever it is that really makes your heart sing. So that's okay. But I will tell you right now, if you could be as natural as possible and be who you are from the beginning, you won't ever have to hide. You won't ever have to apologize. And you will genuinely get the most you can out of whoever you interview. The best interviews I've had are really, you think you start with small talk, but they get comfortable with you enough where those interviews grow into you forget that you're on the air. And that's what you want to have to do. And that's about being genuine and about caring about who you're talking to. And as everybody else has mentioned, listening to what they're saying. And you'll see that wow, I learned something about something I maybe didn't care about today, or when I went into it, it wasn't my thing. But be open to whatever it is that's going to come your way.
I think you said I think that's awesome, Melissa. I think you said a really good point to immerse yourself. When you're interviewing, that's your story for the day, whether it's radio, TV, digital, that's your story for the day. So really take it on, jump in full speed, and make your interviewee comfortable, because chances are they're probably a little nervous, especially if they're going to be on TV. I mean, if it's so many people, they're like, where do I look? What do I say? What do I do? So they're a little nervous anyway. So make them comfortable, try and relate with them one-on-one, whether you're interviewing a parent or a kid or a teenager, whoever, Black, white, Hispanic, whatever, just try and relate to them. And I would always go back to just make sure you're listening to them, because if you're not listening, people can tell.
I hate to interrupt, but we're down to about 5 minutes left. And I do want to get to another question before we go too far along here. Avery, you've got a question, and Avery, go ahead if we can hear you. We're still working on it. Avery, you there?
Yeah, looks like Avery's still muted.
Oh, he's still muted. Got to unmute, Avery.
Hang on.
There you go. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we got you.
All right. So my question is, when considering the design of a new show or a new podcast or anything like that, is it better to design it with a specific audience in mind, or cater it to an audience that sort of naturally attaches onto it? If that makes sense.
Okay, thank you. Anybody want to try to tackle that? Do you design your content for audience, or do you design it for general listeners?
I think it's a balance. For us, I know we have an idea of who tends to listen to WILL, and certainly we want to offer programming that appeals to that audience. But at the same time, as a public radio station, we're always trying to expand that audience. We're always trying to broaden it and to bring voices to our airwaves that you might not always hear. So it's certainly, I think it's a balance. I think you should know, if you're working for an established station, they know through ratings numbers kind of who's listening and what they like to hear, what kinds of guests, what kinds of shows. If you're starting up your own podcast or other type of show, then that's kind of up to you. I mean, if you kind of know what type of person you're trying to reach, and then you can try and cater to that type of person. Try and reach out to some people you think fall into that audience. Ask them questions. What do you want to hear about this topic? Who would you want me to talk to? Who would you want to hear from? Get feedback. If you're building from the ground up, it's a good opportunity just to kind of mold to the audience you want.
Anybody else want to jump in, or you kind of think that covers it?
No, I think Brian more or less covered it. I think, with a podcast, it's different because like Brian said, you're kind of creating your own audience. But if you work for a radio station, your audience is probably pretty well established. And so to an extent, yes, you always want to try to be thinking outside the box and be creative. But at the same time, you have to keep back in mind that, hey, we're not getting these ratings for just any old reason. If we have Republicans listening or Democrats listening or primarily older men listening or women listening or what have you, you have to know that those people are the ones listening and going to your advertisers, et cetera, et cetera. It was quite frankly a hard truth that I had to learn when I first got started here at WDWS. But it's just a fact of life that, if you have, let's say, a listenership that leans hard to the right and you don't have, segments that cater to them, you're probably going to have some listeners who are hitting the off button. That's just an unfortunate fact of life.
Yeah. Hey, let me wrap things up here, but I do want to give each of you maybe 30 seconds here to give your best tip for a class of 2020 person in this job environment looking for a job. What's your number one tip at this point, other than, go out there and work hard, apply for 50 jobs, hoping to get one, whatever it is? Let's hear you. And let's start alphabetically. So I'll start with Andrea.
I would say, well, first of all, thank you for having me be a part of this. It was nice to see all of you guys, Brian, John, Tim, Melissa, everybody, and Ken. I would just say this is a business where I think we've all been told at one point, oh, you're not going to make it. People will always be ready to kind of knock you down. It's just the nature of the business. So develop a thick skin. I think we've all had to do that early on too. I definitely don't think radio is a dying breed. I was told that 20 plus years ago, and we're all still here. There's always going to be a need for radio. And I would say don't give up. Stay strong. Persevere. Push through. If this is what you want to do, this is the greatest career in the world, I think. We get to do something unique and be informative to the public, and it changes every day. It's the greatest gig in the world. So especially now in these challenging, crazy times, it's not going to be like this forever. So just stay with it and stay strong. Persevere.
Tim Bittman, you're up next.
Yeah, Andrea kind of stole my thunder there, which was to not give up and to not let how should I say this delicately? In this environment, there are a lot of people out there who just plain don't like journalists, and you just can't let that bother you, because there's always going to be a need for storytellers, and there's always going to be a need for people like us. So I guess if Andrea said that, I will go a different direction. And again, this is something that you don't already know, but as an introvert, this is something I learned the hard way. Network, network, network. Shake hands, send emails, communicate with people on social media, and don't just make that one contact. Check back in every once in a while, so that way you are at the top of that person's mind. And when a job opening comes, they would be thinking of you when otherwise maybe they wouldn't.
Melissa.
Oh, yes. Okay. I was going to say the exact same thing. And it's funny, Andrea, I was about to start with, I remember that, the professors coming into our class saying, oh, it's a tough market. You'll never make it. I mean, this story is old. It has been done. So what I would say to you is use this time, this moment in history, to do what you have learned, take everything that you've learned over the last 4 years, be positive, channel that into something creative and unique, and find your niche, whatever that is. There will be a space for those that are creative, those that thrive. And don't just think you're stuck in one little thing. It isn't just radio, it isn't just TV, it isn't just golf or news or whatever it is. I bake cakes on the side. And it's okay for you to have a multitude of talents and a multitude of interests. Use 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 of them and put it together and put something out there. But don't sit around like this is just, it's done. It isn't done for you. This is now where the rest of us are catching up to where you already are.
Brian, your tip?
I would say especially if you're interested in news, keep public radio in mind. WIOL, where I work, when I started there in 2016, we had 2 full-time reporters plus myself. We're up to 5 full-time reporters. We built a talk show from the ground up. Public radio is growing. We just had a successful fundraiser. It might be a tough market. You've heard that story, but public radio is growing. There are opportunities out there.
My thanks to all 4 of you and to the attendees who were on this. Maybe at some point this fall, if there is a football season or homecoming, we can all meet at Murphy's.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks
Sounds like a
again,
plan.
everybody.
For
And thanks
sure.
to the people online and attendees. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
See everybody.
Bye.
Good morning, Illini. Just because we have to stay home doesn't mean we have to stop learning about the world around us.
The Brookfield Zoo is continuing that mission. But like many businesses across the country, its doors have been closed to the public since Governor Pritzker announced the statewide stay-at-home order on March 21st. Despite this, the work that they do hasn't stopped.
Joining us today is Tim Sullivan, Curator of Behavioral Husbandry at the Brookfield Zoo. Thanks for joining us, Tim.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
So before we start, tell me, what do you enjoy most about doing your job?
I walk into the zoo every day and pass by all sorts of exotic and wonderful animals. I think it's one of the best jobs in the world because I get to share this adventure with my colleagues. So it's pretty special to have an employment like this. I've been here about 40 years now. So I was once a keeper in the marine mammal area. So I really loved working with the animals. So working with the dolphins and the walrus were really great. But I learned I was a marine mammal snob. So once I got out of my job and moved into all the other areas, every animal is so unique and interesting once you get to know them. And so that's been the greatest part of the last 20 years of my job, is learning about all the various animals and their niche in the environment and what makes them special and important to the world. And so that's really, really cool.
Over your time at the zoo, you've seen a lot of change in your position and your responsibilities. But even in these past few weeks, there's been an unprecedented amount of change. How has your job changed now?
COVID is just one big change that we're all adapting to right now. There are no policies written. A lot of times we have a chance to predict things that are happening and then develop contingency plans for that. This is no different than any other emergency that we've had at the zoo, whether it's a blizzard or a flood or a tornado warning. We're using similar kind of constructs to make sure that the animals are always getting the highest level of care they can get, taking care of our staff, making sure they're safe. And the only part of the equation that's missing now is our guests. Sometimes we've closed the zoo a few times since 1934, but now we've been closed for almost 2 months. And so that has been the hardest thing to get used to. But as I mentioned, we really have to focus on the animals and make sure that their care is as good or even better than before the COVID epidemic.
I want to talk a little bit about bringing the zoo to you and that whole initiative. Where did that idea come from?
Our mission here at the zoo is to connect people with wildlife and nature. And whether that happens in person when they come here to the zoo, which 2 million plus people do every year, we can still connect them via virtual experiences. The Zoo to You segments is just one more extension of that, where every day at 11 o'clock, we go and find a special animal. And the best thing is that we get our animal care staff to do most of these segments. I was really excited about the African painted dog puppy story yesterday. They got to be the cutest darn little kids around, and they were just fascinated with, first of all, being out in their enclosure, and then getting, I guess I'll call it bones from heaven yesterday, when the bones were just kind of tossed in. They had no idea where they're coming from. There was a half a second of surprise, and then like, well, this is great. I don't care where it came from. I love bones. I love meat. And they just went around and played and showed all that complex social behavior that African painted dogs are known for.
So how can people continue to support the zoo and the work that you're doing?
Well, fantastic. Join us every 11 o'clock every day. But it's very helpful for folks that still care about animals, still care about our planet and our mission. If they have the means to provide anything to help us along during this time, it's great. You can go to our website, of course, at czs.org or brookfieldzoo.org. And there are ways and different amounts that you can pledge if you're willing to do so. The animals really need it, and we really appreciate that.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Tim, and for telling us a little bit about the work that you're still doing.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Be sure to join us next week as we go a little bit more in depth and learn a little bit more about some of these animals. I'm Connor Seco. Make it a good morning, Illini.
Hello there, everybody. I hope we can all hear each other well. I want to welcome you to the IN Media Virtual Conference on Live Sports. My name is John Paul. I'm a retired lecturer in the Department of Journalism for about 20 years. Had a TV life prior to that in local TV, both PBS and a CBS affiliate, and actually contribute my life career to working at WPGU. And I think you'll find out for the attendees and for those who may be watching on YouTube today that most of these people you're going to hear from today will tell you Fighting Illini Productions is the reason they are where they are today. At least I think that's the case. Although it might have been called something different when you were there, Carlos, is that right?
It was Illini Productions.
Yeah, but same thing. And we have another panelist that will be joining us in a few minutes. Weston Carter will be with us in a few minutes. Our goal today is to have these experts and alums share with you, the class of 2020 and recent alums, some tips for how to get into the video business, video sports business, live sports. I don't know how much live sports any of you do, although I think, Mike, you do some live sports with Student U, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Working with all across 14 campuses in the Big Ten. We're doing live events.
I would imagine Weston does some live sports in Student U at Auburn. He'll, like I said, will join us in a few minutes. So that's our goal today. Make sure that if you have a question for the panelists, you use the Q&A button on Zoom, or you can also use chat, and we'll get to your questions or comments or suggestions. So let me first start with introducing our panelists, and I'll try to go in alphabetical order. So Karina, that puts you up front and center. Karina, you got your start. You went to the University of Illinois how many years ago?
About 10. I graduated 10 years ago, so.
Yeah, but it feels like it was 2 weeks ago.
It does. Time has flown, but also not at the same time.
So we know you currently do video with the Warriors, and you're doing as a producer, editor. Explain what you do now, and then give us the short version of how you got from Fighting Illini Productions, frankly, as a student, through Detroit and other places to wind up in Golden State.
Yeah, so things honestly began in Champaign for me. I found out about Illini Productions through Intro to Journalism class with Jennifer Follis, and didn't know what I was doing, was terrified my first year, didn't want to touch the camera because I thought I was going to break everything. But I did it throughout my sophomore, junior, senior years, and after college a little bit as well. And I actually was unemployed for quite some time after I left Champaign. but I just applied to tons and tons of jobs, and somehow someone from the Pistons reached out to me. They had seen my application on Teamwork Online, and that's a really great resource for anybody who's interested in working in sports, Teamwork Online. And then that was my first big girl job. And from there, I ended up working at Auburn University, where Weston works now. And we were colleagues there too, because my boss, when I was a student, hired me away from the Pistons to join that group. So again, networking is important. And then I got an incredible opportunity with the Warriors. Timing was just right. I started in the middle of the season in 2017, and they were looking for a long form editor. And I did a lot of that long form kind of journalism, documentary style pieces. And I just got lucky. And I still to this day, I'm like, how did I get here? But I attribute it to my time in Champaign for sure.
Great. Carlos, tell us how you got to where you are and what things you did at Illini Productions or Fighting Illini Productions or Student U, if they had that when you were there, that, helped you navigate your path to Jacksonville.
Sure. So much like Karina, I did actually, when I went to college, I didn't declare a major. I wasn't really too sure of what I wanted to do. I was always a pretty good writer, so I ended up taking the Intro to Journalism class. From there, working at WPGU, working with the Daily Illini, and then eventually getting in with Illini Productions. I know for me personally, I know, and it may or may not have changed since, but everyone wanted to work in sports. So it was tougher to get some of those sports assignments or just to be working in that world. Which, news in general, I always worked on that, doing election coverage and different experiences like that, you're still getting good hands-on experience. You're still interviewing, you're still shooting, you're still editing, you're still writing. So definitely, I was taking advantage of as many of those opportunities as I could. Once I got into Illini Productions, I did that my last 2 years in Champaign, along with classes with JP and the rest of the track, and Weston. We were classmates as well. So after that, I was fortunate enough to get an internship with the Chicago Bears, which is great because that's my hometown team. So being from Chicago originally, stayed with my mom and just kind of worked there every day. Funny, getting the internship with the Bears, again, just back to that networking, they did reach out directly to Andy and Daryl, who were my bosses at the time. And they were specifically seeking Big Ten kind of multimedia and journalism, type of backgrounds. Did that the 2008 season. After that, I was unemployed for several months, was kind of the peak of the recession. So it was definitely tough getting even an internship. Even internships had 300 or 400 applicants with people older than me and more experience. So just hanging in there and working some of the connections that I made. Once the Jaguars posted a job, I reached out to my previous boss with the Bears, who had actually gotten his start with the Jaguars. So again, kind of just timing and knowing the right people at the right time definitely helped. And, when I got to Jacksonville, I figured I'd be there 1 year or two because that was my experience with the Bears. And lo and behold, I'm still here. We upgraded our video boards, as you can see, 6 or so years ago. Our department blew up, and nowadays, just helping out with social content, internal marketing content, ticket campaigns. It's definitely blown up a lot for us. So in a good way.
Well, great. We're glad to have you and your expertise on the panel today, Carlos. Thank you. The bearded Weston Carter has joined us from Alabama. I think he's in Alabama. Everybody says, hi, Weston. We want to know a little bit about, we know you're at Auburn and that you're director of video services. Was that pretty much what someone was doing when you started at Illini Productions? I mean, are you doing the same thing and coordinating video services for Auburn?
In some ways, yes. In a lot of ways, my role has changed a lot over my career. I started out in a lot more on the production side, where I would be a lot more behind the camera, editing, traveling with teams and being involved with Illini Productions at the time, it was extremely beneficial. So that was, kind of where I started live production, post-production, and I've kind of grown over the years into some roles where I deal a lot more on the technical side now in a lot of areas, and I oversee all of our technology for all of our systems. So that's kind of been the transition for me from the beginning to where I am now. Without that understanding at that point, I wouldn't have been where I am now by any means. But I do coordinate a lot of things, have my hands involved in a lot of areas of production.
Okay, we're going to get some questions that are people are patiently waiting for, but I want to turn to you, Mike. Mike, you did Student U. You did Student U off camera or on camera when you were in school, and you did Fighting Illini Productions.
Right. Yeah, I did a little bit of both, but I think I quickly found out that behind the camera was where I thrived a little bit more. But I came to campus in 2013 as a Spanish major, and actually, believe it or not, Wes, if you don't remember, you hired me when I was a freshman with minimal iMovie experience. But from there, I got a lot of, just getting into Fighting Illini Productions, was able to get into Student U, work a lot with the technical equipment that's required and putting on live events. And then also got to work in video board shows to see that side as well. And from there, interned at ESPN for a summer, focused in editing. And I kind of got into that from Lauren Jonan, now Lauren Roberts, I believe. But she kind of helped pave the way with ESPN, where I was able to edit highlights for SportsCenter, NFL Live, NFL Insiders. And then after college, I got into the BTN Now program, which is a network operations workshop where you get to work with professional equipment in all of the BTN control rooms that are located in Chicago. And that's where they, produce all of their shows across the 14 campuses in the Big Ten, which is a unique but a modern way to put on some shows. And after doing the internship program, I went out to the University of Maryland and ran their Student U program for about 2 years. And after there was an opening back home in Chicago at BTN, I decided to jump on that. So I've been back at BTN for about 1.5 years now.
And Mike, you work with several other U of I grads at BTN, is that right?
Yeah. So my boss is Frank Yost, who I believe Frank, went to school with all three of you guys. Mm-hmm. Not you, JP, unfortunately. But, and then I work with Colleen Dempsey, has worked on a lot of our remote broadcasts. Roger Blanco, I think I see Roger in this panel now, among many others. Yeah.
Okay, let's get to a question. Gavin Good, who is a recent graduate, December graduate. Gavin's out there beating the pavement for a job. Gavin's got a question. Gavin, go ahead.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for doing this. It's really valuable for us in this time. I'm wondering, without being able to be with athletes and the people you work with right now, how you guys are producing content. Are you mostly relying on old content and stuff that you already had in the bank, or are you somehow able to use, like Zoom? I don't know, like how that would work that well, but how are you doing that basically?
I can pop in on this one. It's really challenging right now with the Warriors. We are utilizing Zoom and Ring Central. This morning, actually, I just finished editing a video with all Zoom footage. And me and 2 other coworkers were all screen recording different angles of each Zoom. And so that was really a fun, unique thing that I've never done before. It almost felt like you were TDing too, to like watch reactions and all that stuff. But we're relying on those if there is a player or coach involvement. And a lot of it is repurposing old interviews or reimagining ways that you can use press conferences differently. Can you cut up a press conference in a fun, unique way? Or can you look at the bloopers and put together a little package? And so it's being more creative, and it's been fun like to challenge yourself because you don't have access to all of the athletes or coaches that you normally would.
Yeah, I know
Carlos,
for
you want to jump in?
yeah, you know, that's something we've definitely been dealing with. I know prior to, you know, having to leave the offices to work remotely, we were starting to plan out our media day, which typically you know, would take place in June. That's kind of one we're still going to have to solve for. We don't know if when things resume, if, you know, there'll still be kind of those traditional events. But I know for draft, you know, draft was a good example. We basically were completely virtual, just like the league was with its broadcast. So it is a lot more depending on the players, you know, making those asks. We did a lot of the Zoom stuff, all the coaches' press conferences, all of the phone calls to the draft picks. You know, everything was done through Zoom or through Teams. And then, you know, we would do cut-ups afterwards as well from that stuff. But a lot of the other content we've posted for social media has been reaching out to players, you know, through our PR team. So depending on different content ideas that might come up, you know, we were still on the hook for some sponsored content. So we still had to solve for that, you know, regardless of the situation. So some of it was just reaching out to players, them filming on their cell phones or however else they could do it, shooting it back to us, and then us basically editing it or adding whatever graphics or other elements in post. So, you know, sometimes it's tough, I guess, being at the will of someone else, you know, to provide that stuff. But, you know, so far we've had pretty good results doing that. So we're kind of limping along doing that for now.
And Mike, I know you coordinate Student U broadcast. Well, there aren't any of those. There aren't any games. So what kind of content is being demanded from your part of BTN at this point?
Yeah, no games means no live events, right? But one thing that our remote team has been doing a lot has been repurposing footage, you know, kind of stemming off of what Carlos and Karina were saying. Although it's difficult to have all of these in-person interviews, we are doing Zoom interviews with a lot of athletes and doing what we call video recalls. I actually have one set up tomorrow with Rose Lavelle, who plays on the women's national soccer team. But, you know, we're recalling big events in BTN history, and we'll record our Zoom. We'll take this archived footage that we've got that's been sitting here for a time like this, I guess. And we've been pumping those out the past few weeks. So that's how we've learned, I guess, from Fighting Illini Productions, just to be able to adapt. You know, although now I'm editing, the past 2.5 years, I've just been working in live events. So it's nice to still have those skills and to be able to apply them and be useful, I guess.
Okay, let me move along to a question from Roger Blanco. And Roger has a question kind of about resume video and how do you make your video stand out, you know, in a job market like this? You know, what do you expect, Karina or Carlos or Weston or Mike, if you were hiring somebody, what are you looking for in that resume video to make it jump out against all the others you might see? Roger, go ahead.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
All right, thank you for everyone taking your time. Just kind of asking, like, how do you like make your kind of like the long form videos kind of stand out, producing them, and then also, you know, I was a freelancer working with Mike, and just kind of seeing like how can someone like me or, you know, any prospective students, how can one get into this video business like full time?
Weston, you want to start?
Sure, I'll start with just getting into the business. A lot of it just comes down to just taking that first leap, and the first leap for me was while I was on campus as a student, getting involved in Illini production. So getting involved with sports production is very unique. What I learned in the classroom with Mitch and JP and working with video production at that level was a great foundation. And then I was able to really take it to live production and really just expand it. So for me at the time, I got involved while I was still in college, and I found that to be, I was involved with Illini Productions my junior and senior year. and through grad school, and then I got my first job. So I was involved for a total of 4 years before I got my first full-time job, and it was I took on just about everything that I could. I would edit, I would travel with teams, I would volunteer to shoot things, I would go and do the grunt work. Whatever gave me more experience along the way was what I was looking for, because at some point I don't know how to do something until I've done it, and then I can relate that later in my career. So that experience is what I wanted very much. And so I never said no, but I also asked a ton of questions. And I think if you ever work with me, I ask a ton of questions, and it's kind of my MO. But through that, I learned a lot, and that helped me grow a lot. So every single day I go to work, I always learn something, and it's more than just one thing. And I think that is one thing that's helped me get into the industry to get the positions that I want. I'm always better the next day than I was the day before. I always know more than I did the day before. And that's sometimes tough just with time, and obviously in this industry right now there's a lot of questions. But the best thing I can do to tell you is, if you're looking to get into the industry, there's a lot of training that you can go through, or practicing, or just finding footage and editing and practicing on your own, and just giving yourself repetition. Reps in this is huge. And if you don't give yourself the practice, a lot of times doing something once, that wasn't really your best foot forward. You were learning along the way. So you've got to keep refining it over and over and over again. And then you're going to start to really see the strides and growth. So that is where I found over my career was repetition, continuing to do something. Just because I worked a live event, I should never say, well, that was my best one. Every single show should be better. And I found that true with sports. And, you know, we constantly are looking to critique ourselves in this industry, and we're very blunt about it. And we will go through and say, you know, that wasn't your best effort, but there were some very, you know, crazy situations and extenuating circumstances that created those issues for us potentially. So from our standpoint, you know, we're not making excuses, but we also know the context to when we get into shows. So say the lights do go off for 30 minutes in the middle of a game. Well, what do you do at that point? I know Tim Dittman was talking about that earlier as an announcer. What do you do when you're behind the scenes? Those are all things you've got to be prepared for. So the repetition and putting yourself through those situations as much as you can. And if you're looking for that first job at this point, sometimes those come with the job, or they come with an internship, or they come with saying, hey, let me just tag along and follow you through, you know, can I be a volunteer for a month, for 2 months, for a semester, and get some additional your foot in the door and get some experience. So a lot of times that's where people find, if you don't have the skills or the expertise just yet, don't accept that as, well, I'm never going to have a future in this, because there's a lot of people that come from different backgrounds in this industry, and they have very, very long careers.
Reno, you want to add anything?
Yeah, a lot of the things that Weston said, I'll echo, but in regards to the demo reel question, I know that's a hot topic in our industry. For me, it's whatever you're applying to, make sure, whatever position you're applying to, make sure that your demo reel demonstrates that skill set. So if you're applying for a videographer job, like, it's show me your shots, show me your footage, show me your best clips, your best highlights. If it's an editing job, you know, one thing I did is I put, you know, private Vimeo links with my long form content, you know, because that can't, a 6-minute video can't necessarily go into a reel. So you have examples. If you're applying for a technical director position, do you have, you know, yourself calling a game? Do you have the best intro, you know, from a basketball game that you directed? It should be relevant. And it, you know, I've heard a lot of questions about how long should it be? If you're applying for like a producer editor type position, I think the sweet spot for a lot of people is like 60 to 90 seconds. Because I know a lot of positions have, you're not just a videographer, you're not just a producer, you're not, you might be doing everything. So that's my advice for that side of things.
Okay, Mike, someone has a question specifically for you. Jana, are you online? And ask your question to Mike. Well, are you there? I've got his question if I want to start with that. Mike, he wants to know, how do you improve your editing skills, considering that you may have started with very little, and apparently this person has started with very little too. And is that a case of just more repetition?
That's definitely the start, right? Being able to make a mistake and say, wow, that didn't look so good. And then to go back and do it again a little bit better that's one of the greatest successes you can have with editing. I would say that, like, especially in this time, there are so many tutorials out there. I think I spent my winter break. That was always my goal over winter break when I didn't have a class load. I'd watch a YouTube video every day of how to do something. And then I'd go take some sample footage. Maybe I took it in my backyard sometimes, put it on my laptop, and then Premiere is basically free when you're a student, which is something you should take advantage of. And then I just play around with templates in there, watch tutorials, and then just do it myself. I was watching a video I made my senior year of college, and it was, at the time, that was my bread and butter. I was so proud of it. And I watched it a couple weeks ago, and I was cringing at so much of it just because it didn't age as well as I thought it would. So I would say, yeah, repetition definitely is the first thing. And then just being able to understand that you will get better when you do these things. You'll get faster too. I think when I was at ESPN, that was what I learned the most, was being efficient with your time, and every move you make is a useful move. I had one other thing. If I think about it, I'll jump back in.
To it. Carlos, are they likely to encounter, well, they probably will encounter different editing software in future jobs, right, than what they're used to? So say they're using Premiere in college.
Yeah.
What do you guys use, and are they all similar?
Yeah, I know when I was in college, I learned using Avid. That's what we had at Illini Productions. That's what we had at the Jaguars when I first got there. Eventually, as like DSLRs kind of came into the mix, and other camera formats, and we eventually switched to Premiere. We use After Effects a lot. Our designers use Photoshop and Illustrator a lot, so it just kind of made more sense. But if you have learned on Avid, a lot of the shortcuts that you're accustomed to, Premiere took a lot of those same things. Same thing with Final Cut. I was never a big Final Cut person, but Premiere, I think, has done an okay job of at least taking some of those shortcuts and some of those things you were probably accustomed to from Avid or Final Cut or whatever else. But yeah, I mean, as far as I know, most people are on Premiere or Avid, and I think those are similar enough at this
Weston,
point. So.
What's Auburn use at this point?
We were Avid, and then we moved to Premiere. So I'd say if you have the foundations of editing, then you're going to be fine in the industry. So if you're a good editor, you're not going to let the software, the tools hold you back. Learning new software should always, you should welcome it, because it's just another tool in your toolbox. So, if you're a great Avid editor, you'll probably be a great Premiere editor. If you understand pacing, you understand storytelling, and you understand what makes all the elements of a great video, then you're going to be a great editor no matter what platform you use.
So what do you tell a student who is, let me turn to Carlos on this. You grew up as a Bears fan, right? So,
correct.
So what if you said, I only want to edit for the Bears? Are you limiting yourself if you say,
yeah,
I
absolutely.
only want to work in Chicago, I only want to work for a Big Ten team, whatever it might be?
I was going to say that, when with the demo reels, and Mike touched on it too, as far as the editing and the repetition. I guess that'd be kind of one of my big messages too, is don't limit yourself. I grew up in Chicago. Everyone who knows me here, that's all I ever talk about. I'm very proud of where I'm from. But, you know, and I'm sure when I was younger, I probably never thought I wouldn't live and work in Chicago. But I left, and, you know, there's a beach here, and I got married, and I have a family now, and a lot of good has come from leaving my hometown. My mom's still there, my grandma, still have lots of connections, and still go back, you know, 2-3 times a year. But yeah, absolutely, you do not want to limit yourself. Same thing with editing, or, you know, whatever your entry into the business would be. You know, everyone always wants to do an exciting sports highlight, but, you know, how many of us can still tell a nice story? You know, news packages are cut differently. We tell people when they're applying for jobs with us, it's not always going to be, you know, big highlights. There's going to be community packages. There's going to be press conferences. There's going to be a lot more of those mundane or less sexy types of projects. But again, as Weston has said it, you know, you need to be able to edit. What's the story? You know, how much time do I have? Typically, you're going to have 30 to 60 seconds, and a minute for us during our show is a long time. So you need to be able to tell a story within that amount of, you know, within that frame of time. So
let's go to a question from another.
Anyway.
Okay, another attendee. Alex, you have a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, hi guys. Well, what I wanted to ask is, also I've been a video editor at the Daily Atlanta these past 2 years, and I felt like when I was putting stuff together, one of the, I guess I don't want to say a problem, but something that that I always felt like I wanted to improve on was sort of like narrowing down content and trying to figure out like what did I want to put in my video, what I didn't want. I felt like, oh, I have a ton of stuff that I didn't use that I felt like could have been in the video. And I don't know, I just kind of want to ask, like, what is sort of like your process of narrowing down content and figuring out like what should go into the final piece and what gets left out?
I'll pop in. When I struggle to figure out where to start with a piece, I go back to something I learned in intro to journalism: who, what, where, when, why, and in that order. If I'm not sure, I start with that and then let the story kind of develop. It's one of the biggest challenges, but some other kind of concrete pieces of advice I'll give is what's interesting, what sound bites are different and unique, what might capture your attention within the first 3 to 5 seconds, and then kind of let your story unfold. There's so many different ways to tell a story, and that's one of the things that I look back in my experience in Champaign. I learned so much in my classroom and working with Illini Productions. But sometimes when you're not sure, you're kind of struggling with where to go, start with that as a foundation, and that should help you.
Anybody else want to jump in? Okay, let me turn to Jared. Jared has a question. I think that a lot of us who are sports fans, there aren't any games these days. So the stories or videos you may be telling are really not about games. How has that made you adapt, and what changes? Jared, you're there. Go ahead, ask your question.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, basically, JP summed it up. Even like without, you know, the pretense of there being a global pandemic that's keeping us inside, I wanted to know, like, in like a normal context, when you guys get stories that aren't about sports specifically, but, you know, they involve, you know, figures in sports, you know, some type of thing going on within like a sport organization, like that type of stuff, how do you approach those stories?
I can chime in, I guess, on this one. We've thankfully in the last couple of years, we've been able to do some more long form content. That's kind of the struggle, right? I think for a lot of us, those are some of the best projects to work on. There is a lot of production that goes into them. And, you know, it takes a lot of time and effort to put those out. I think, again, it's a little tougher to do usually because of, how big your department might be, or budgets, or, whatever other hurdles there might be. The last couple years, if you can look these up later, but we did a documentary on Leonard Fournette, our running back, and a couple seasons before that, we did a documentary on our new uniform. So that involved traveling. I know for the Fournette one, we sent a team to New Orleans. We interviewed his high school football coach. We interviewed his mom. We walked through his neighborhood. So a lot of production into that. That one organizationally wasn't even necessarily it didn't come from our group. It kind of came more from PR. There was an attempt to kind of rebuild his image after a bad year, and thereby kind of rebuild the organization's image. So that one did have a lot of support, but I know there is definitely a craving for that. I mean, this year we were planning on doing a couple more. Everything's kind of come to a halt and is on pause. But definitely anything like episodic or like long form documentary style, I don't think you will have any problem getting support for that. It's really just a matter of executing it. Because it does require so much time and attention from everyone. So hopefully it helps a little bit.
And I'll just say from the network side, I mean, we can know a storyline early in, let's say, the men's basketball season for the Big Ten. We know that Kofi Coburn's probably going to be a big story this year. I mean, it may not be a long form piece that we make right away. Maybe that's something we plan once the season's over, but from the beginning of the season to the end of the season, we probably have plenty of graphics built to highlight some great things that he's been doing along the way. And maybe as stories develop, you may find that you're telling it in a different way, whether it's just a graphic on a live event, or maybe you are putting something together that's more long form. And then you see that you're posting a tease of that long form video on Twitter that's only 30 seconds long, and then another tease that's on Instagram that's only 30 seconds long. You can find that depending on your platform, you could be telling a story in such a different way too.
Okay, let me move along to another question from another attendee here. Avery Schaefer is with us. Avery, you have a question about how do you tell about sports during a crisis? Help me.
Okay, so what I've noticed informally is that the sports industry has had the unique position of being a common place where people turn in times of crisis. Given that people can't really do that right now with COVID, how do we best facilitate the fulfillment of that role?
Okay, thanks, Avery. I'm going to let any one of you jump in on that.
I'll hop in. That's the loaded question we're all trying to figure out right now. I think for us here at the Warriors, we're just trying to remind our fans. Mike, you had mentioned archive, games or archive footage. We're doing the same right now. We believe back in 2006, 07, that was a big moment in time. So right now we're live streaming games on Facebook. We're trying to just think of ways to connect our Warriors fans to our players, to our content, to our stories, to our history. For us, luckily, we've had a nice little championship run the past several years, so that's always refreshing. But it's you asked the $1 million question. I think we're all trying to figure it out right now, but those are some of the ways that we've tried to handle it.
Yeah, Karina, by the way, you're not wearing an NBA ring today?
I'm not today. I don't usually wear them on, working from home, but I do have a couple here. I won't tell where they are though.
Pretty cool. Carlos, you want to jump in on that topic too, about how we tell about sports in a sports-starved world when you don't really have anything?
Yeah, I know, pretty early on in the working remotely situation, that was a pretty big message from our senior leadership. What content can we create or provide that will take people's minds off of the current situation a little bit? So kind of a lot of the same things. Still, trying to connect our players with our fans, which we've done a lot of that stuff. You know, they're dealing with the same situations as we are. And then as Mike has mentioned too, kind of some of the nostalgic moments or just the look backs. We've done a lot of that stuff as well, just to kind of take people's minds off of things. I'm hoping, you know, that there will be a full-on football season and game days and everything. That's definitely like my favorite part. That's my bread and butter. But you know, we're planning contingencies for no capacity or quarter capacity or regular capacity. So you know, I do think if we can get to that, that's going to help a lot. You know, and definitely we'll see what MLB and NBA do before the fall. But yeah, that's the big question. Like Karina said, that's what we're all trying to solve for sure.
Weston, I have a niece who shouts War Eagle in my ear every time I talk to her. How are you trying to satisfy Auburn fans at this point who are dying for some Auburn sports info, athletics, activity?
Mm-hmm. We're kind of in the same boat as what Karina and Carlos and Mike had already said. We pull from our archive from last season, great moments. Fortunately, we do an annual banquet style for all of our student athletes, and they all get awards. So we had that a couple weeks ago where that we were revealing the athlete of the year and things like that. So we were able to really engage with our fans with kind of a normalcy there. But I think a couple days ago now, our motion graphics guy here, he went out and they did some drone shots on campus for Star Wars May the 4th, and they did an awesome job getting they did some crazy animations and did an entire chase across all of our athletic facilities, and so it was really cool having Star Wars ships flying across campus. So there's some cool things you can do with outside of sports, but still inclusive to what athletics brings. So we had the final shot where they shot the other ship right over the football stadium with the video board in the background and Gus Malzahn going boom right in the background. So it was a pretty cool thing, and I think a lot of people engaged with it well.
Yeah, let's move on to another question. Dan Girardi's on the line, and Dan is been involved in Good Morning Illini and in Student U, I believe, in Illini Productions. Dan, go ahead with your question.
Hey guys, thank you all for taking the time to talk with us today. I've been working for Fighting Illini Productions for the last 4 years, which has been awesome. So I've gotten great experience with, you know, shooting and editing and live production, and I know how important all of that is to what you guys do. But I was just wondering if there's anything specifically, like any specific skills you guys look for outside of like video editing and shooting and live production skills that you guys really look for and use in your jobs.
I'll say whenever I'm looking for someone sorry, Carlos, whenever I'm looking for someone to get into that first step of their career, I'm looking for them to have experience in a lot of areas, as many as I check boxes as it can be. So if you can shoot, if you can edit, if you know how to run replay, if you know how to do if to TV or direct or produce, because at that point in your career, it could go a lot of different ways for me. And I know that happened to me. But if, you know, just because you're great at shooting today doesn't mean that that's what you're going to do your entire career. That probably translates very well to you being a great director. If you know all the shots that are great, then you can tell someone else how to get those shots in a couple years and tell them what you're envisioning. So I'm looking for someone who is kind of an all-star. I'm looking for someone who can do a lot of things, or you've got to do a couple things exceptionally well. And that's what I'm really looking for when it's someone taking that first step out of college.
Yeah, I think I'm looking for a lot of those same things as well. Karina touched on this earlier too, but really focusing on what you're actually applying for. I mean, you know, I've been fortunate enough to be in the position to hire people on occasion, and you're going through hundreds of resumes, and a lot of people get weeded out for not following simple directions, you know, as part of the application. So teamwork online is awesome. But, you know, if I ask for a demo reel and you don't post a demo reel, you're not going to even get a second look. things like having your resume in order. I mean, a lot of things that we might take for granted or might seem like, no-brainers, but a lot of people overlook them. If you're applying for a videographer job, your reel shouldn't be all of your stand-ups. This isn't an on-air talent position. I don't want to see that, and same thing with the timing of it. If you can't show me enough in a minute or two, I don't need 9 minutes of whatever other kind of stuff. It's just not, we don't, just keep in mind the people going through these. A lot of times there's hundreds. I look at the school, maybe references, cover letter, a lot of things that people just don't feel like doing or just don't think to do. And a lot of that stuff matters. If I see Weston or Karina or someone on there, I texted Karina before, hey, so-and-so implied, he interned with you. What do you think about him? Talk to her the next day. So that does happen, and it can very easily help you or, kind of against you. So just stuff like that, kind of common sense stuff, but don't take it for granted.
Yeah, we're down to a few minutes left in the session, so I'd ask if you can be brief or succinct in your answers. Next question is from a current student who's working on his master's degree, and it's specifically for Karina and Weston. Peyton, you want to go ahead with your question?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you all for your time. I hope everyone's doing well with you and your families. I wish you all the best on that front. Yeah, my question particularly pertains to a master's degree. I know both Karina and Weston, your master's degrees aren't necessarily in journalism or media. So the major aside, I guess, how does a master's degree benefit you in the professional landscape, professional realm? Thank you very much.
I'll start. I think it helps because, you don't need a master's degree to have a lot of jobs in video production or media or journalism. But for me, if you want to teach down the road, it's definitely a good thing to have. I worked at Auburn University. It's a university. It definitely helped for me to have my master's degree because, we taught, Weston teaches courses. There were full-time staff that were teaching courses, right? So it can benefit you don't need it. Degree, library and information science. I'm not really using that the way I am my undergraduate degree, but it did help me because I ended up staying 2 extra years in Champaign and, got more reps in working with Illini Production. So it's how you use it, really.
Weston, you want to jump in?
I think for me, with my master's degree was in sports management, and that helped me connect in a lot of ways with event management, marketing, and things that I definitely didn't have experience in. And it helped me directly with where I am in my career at this point, working my way into administration and management. So I think from that perspective, it was very beneficial. And I would never say, I don't say getting all degrees are going to directly impact you, but it is going to help you in your career. Absolutely.
I would agree with that. I mean, I didn't go back and get my master's until I was much older. I guess I'm still old. But I do think having the master's like Karina taught gives you flexibility. Plus, no matter what your master's is in, it can help you rise faster within the organization you're in management and things like that. We're down to the point where we can't take any more questions from attendees. We had one on there, but somehow the question went away. I'm sorry. So real quick, Mike, final suggestions. Are there jobs out there? One tip, give us one big tip for the students.
Oh man, put me on the spot. I guess my biggest tip is we preach versatility in what we do. This industry is an industry full of creative people. So just challenge yourself, because a lot of times someone else might not challenge you, but if you continue to push yourself to get better, then there's no one slowing you down. Just keep challenging yourself, watch videos, learn from people that are doing well in the industry, follow them, see what content is out there, and maybe try to mimic it sometimes, but also do your own thing. And try to be that viral video, or try to just find that style in whatever it is you're doing. I'll leave it at that though.
Okay, Carlos, you got a tip you want to share?
Yeah. So again, not definitely, don't limit yourselves. Something that I found that worked for me a long time ago when I was still sending out DVDs, for demo reels, reaching out to people directly. I mean, again, just some of these things, let's not take them for granted. LinkedIn nowadays and Google, you can look up any video department and any manager and any director and just reach out to people directly. Ask your professors or any other connections that you may have if they know of anything, and use those resources like Teamwork. And again, just, if you are truly hungry, then, look outside of your comfort zone, because there might be a great opportunity somewhere that you wouldn't expect, across the country or, somewhere else. So definitely just be open to it. If you're really hungry, I think that usually comes across in the interview process. So,
right, Karina, tip?
Yeah, for me, it's don't minimize your experience already, what you have, whether you are still in school or you just graduated or you just moved, you're using iMovie to edit, like that's still experience. The stuff you learn in your classes, the stuff you're doing in your internships, whether you're WPGU or Daily Illini, don't minimize that. Use it. And also, this is kind of related, but look at job listings right now and look at the bullet points of what they're looking for and check them off. What do you already have experience? And once you have that, look at what you don't have and then work towards that. That's my biggest piece of advice.
And we'll wind up with Weston. Weston, you got a big tip for him?
Yes, I would say this industry is going through a massive evolution on the other side of this crisis. So be ready for a lot of changes to come up, and those changes will continue to change. So what you went to school for, it may be looking different in another 12 months. So be flexible, be ready to adapt, and know that you may not have all the skills that they're looking for, but sell yourself when you have an opportunity, and sell on the growth that you have over your college career and what you have done in the meantime where you're not able to go out and socialize with other people. What have you done to make yourself better? Those are great points in the meantime that you can work on improving yourself.
Hey, thank you very much, all of you. It was great to see you again. And it's terrific that you've reconnected with students. They appreciate your advice. We do too. So please stay safe, stay well. Go Illini.
ILL.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Media is an essential part of today's world. At the University of Illinois College of Media, our students are curious and creative, innovative and engaged, and they're charting a bold new course. Working with our esteemed faculty, students learn how to ask insightful questions, gather and analyze evidence, and tell a compelling story through words, images, and data. The College of Media at Illinois is an exciting and collaborative place to be. Students run news broadcasts and publish articles, shoot and edit cinematic videos and documentaries, and premiere them at our film festival, create strategic advertising campaigns for real-world clients, design virtual reality apps, and contribute to cutting-edge research. Through experiential learning, our students develop the diverse set of skills necessary to navigate the ever-changing media landscape. The College of Media prepares the next generation of leaders who will shape our fields and industries for decades to come.
Hello.
I'm getting a crew together and I need producers. You in?
Yeah, I'm in.
100% I'm in. Yeah, I'm in. One thing though, I'm already here.
Now we just need anchors.
But who?
We need TV experts.
I know just who to call.
Hello?
Hello?
What are you doing this fall?
Anchoring?
Good answer.
What's in it for me?
An opportunity
Opportunity to what?
to tell stories that matter.
And if I say no?
You won't,
How do you know?
because you picked up the phone.
Good morning, Illini.
Maddie and I, we've both been able to do so much with GMI, and really the only jobs we haven't been able to do have been the ones that each other's had.
That's true. Yeah, I haven't gotten to direct, and you haven't gotten to executive produce. Yeah, between the two of us, we've had every job on GMI. I think my favorite, besides being EP, is definitely doing tag along with Sammy St. Ledger, who is our special guest, also our co-producer. Sammy, how you doing?
Hello, I'm good.
Thanks so much
Miss
for
you
being
guys.
here. We miss you too.
Yeah.
Maddie, why did you decide to start coming to GMI?
I was in the dining hall. I was at late night, if you know what that is. And Maddie Foster interviewed me to talk about net neutrality. And she was like, oh, if you're interested in being on TV or working on a TV show, come to this general meeting tomorrow at this place that you've never heard of that is at the very edge of campus. I just got on a bus and showed up at Richmond and was like, I want to be a part of this.
No way, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I did not know that story.
I remember walking in and just that awkward, there's a ton of seniors. I'm like, oh, who do I talk to? And I just look and Maddie's right there. And I was like, I looked at her phone and I was like, I like your Hufflepuff pop socket. And I believe that's began the friendship.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about the Hufflepuff pop socket conversation. And Dan came into the picture once the class started, right?
I knew of Maddie, and Mariah was in that class too. And I knew Mariah, and other than that, I really didn't know anyone else in the class. So I was like, oh, maybe I can, talk to Maddie about GMI since I've never really done anything with it before. When I started with it, I never thought that I would be this involved with it, and it's just turned into something that I really care about, I feel like, and you guys have been such a huge part of that, so thank you.
We were all very good friends and spent too much time laughing, and I think that really made it so special that we got to do it all together.
We had such great times, and it's sad that we're leaving you, Sammy, but I think we're leaving the show in really great hands with all the new anchors and all the new producers, and Connor taking over as EP. We'll be watching. That's all I have to say.
Good afternoon to everybody, and I think it's still afternoon in Alaska, isn't it, Caitlin? You've got your mic muted. We can't hear you.
It's just now noon here.
Okay, see, I can't tell how far away you are. Okay, well, welcome to another session for the in Media virtual conference. This one about public relations and marketing. I'm John Paul, a retired instructor from the university, taught for about 21 years and did television before that. I'm proud to welcome a great panel today, one of which I used to actually work with for a while in Champaign, I believe, right? Jolene, didn't we work together in Champaign?
We worked together in Champaign, but I was in the Springfield office for the majority of the time.
Well, I still consider you a colleague 90 miles away, at least at that point. A little bit farther away at this point, but welcome again for students or attendees online, either on the conference itself on Zoom or watching on YouTube. Be sure you send your question or chat to us. We welcome your questions. They welcome your questions. So let me get right away to the goal and purpose here is to provide students and attendees in this case with an opportunity to learn from people who are out there already, all of which have a University of Illinois background, all of which are out there doing this every day and are willing to share with you tips on how to get into things in what might be a challenging time in the industry. So let me start by introducing the panel kind of in alphabetical order here. I'm going to start with Carla Erdy. Carla, you're currently communications director at a high school district 230. Where is that? You're muted, Carla. We can't hear you.
There we go. Sorry about that. We are on the south side of Chicago in the suburbs. So Sandburg, Stagg, and Andrew high schools in the Orland Park, Tinley Park, Palos Hills area.
And explain a little bit of what it is you do as communication director, what types of functions you have.
Sure. In my job, it's a very wide range of things. I'm actually a one-person shop until my new employee starts on July 1st, and then we'll be a two-person shop. And really, I'm in charge of all communications for the school district. So I am planning community engagement, media relations, websites, newsletters, speech writing for the superintendent, advising the superintendent and school board on all things communication. So I wear a lot of hats and really have found that my education at Illinois really prepared me for that because I learned to be a storyteller. I learned to ask good questions. I learned to anticipate what the reporters are going to ask me when I am going to go out there and tackle some issues or share some stories. So I do a lot of things.
So Carla, you have your undergrad at Illinois, got a master's at Mizzou, right?
Yes. I recently went back and got my master's at Mizzou in journalism strategic communication as a way to kind of broaden my perspective and look more at digital media and the way that we're using social to connect. So that was another step in the career.
Okay.
But
I want to give our students a chance to introduce and get to meet you too. Mario Gonzalez, who is a U of I alumnus and I think had a career in sports for a while. Mario, did you? You need to unmute. Okay, now try.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, all right, yeah, sometimes my AirPods and Zoom don't like to get along. Yes, when I was at U of I, my kind of concentration was getting into sports reporting. That was kind of always the dream, that was the goal, and after graduation, actually 2 weeks right after graduating, moved out to Alaska and worked with the Alaska Baseball League. So did that for 2 seasons, absolutely incredible opportunity. After that, then make my way over to local television. So I worked for a Fox affiliate in South Bend, Indiana. And then from there, went over to radio for a little bit. And then after that, landed where I am now as the communications and marketing manager for a nonprofit here in Green Bay, Wisconsin.
So you're in the heart of, you're a Bears fan in the heart of Packers country?
Yeah, I sure am. Yep. And it's, being born and raised in Chicago and then coming Green Bay, Wisconsin, they're both cities, but, one's got, a couple, 3 million population and the other has, 260,000 in the entire county. So it's a little bit different, but it is really unique to see an NFL franchise in, a city this small, kind of compared to Chicago. So everyone here does kind of live and breathe, Green Bay Packers. So
Mario, explain what it is you do with your company.
Sure. So very similar to Carla, I am responsible for handling all of our social media platforms, writing press releases, doing anything media relations in terms of, setting up interviews. Carla, I kind of liked how you mentioned, you do some speech writing. So while I don't write speeches for our executive director, one of the things I really do is talk to her and say, okay, this is what we can expect. Let's make sure that we're answering in a way that's really digestible to people that are going to be hearing this. So while it's not speech writing, there's kind of like a little bit of coaching in terms of, okay, how do we communicate our message? Then I also handle all of our website. So with COVID-19 happening, it was, I think all of us, anyone that's involved with anything website, was okay. Now I need to create a new web page and get that going. And then on top of that, just kind of assisting in other projects where there's a big marketing focus on that. So.
Okay, let's move along to Robin Neal. Robin, thanks for joining us today. Robin, you're digital marketing coordinator, is that correct, for the Boston Celtics?
Yes, it is, JP.
How are you?
I'm good right now in Boston, away from my family, but it's been a lot more work than I expected with everything that's going on, being that we don't have games and we don't have broadcasts. We have to create content to get out to our fans on our social channels, and that's pretty much all we have at the moment. So things have actually ramped up for me in terms of work. It's been quite the ride for the past 5 months.
And I would expect our last session was with people who do sports video, and one of the things they brought up is you've got to try to continue to engage your fans through however you do that, social media, online, YouTube videos, whatever it might be. So tell us what it is you do for the Celtics.
So I, like the other people that spoke right before me, I am in charge of running their social media accounts as well as email marketing. So that's a wide range of things on a typical game night. And even right now, it's creating content, like you said, to engage our fans in a time where we don't have any live games, and making sure that we're still staying connected, keeping them up to date on things that are going on our end. But during the season, a lot of fun with covering the games on social media, covering any player events that they have outside of the arena, but a bunch of fun just covering the team on social media, and then email communication as well.
And help us here, Robin. Since your days at U of I, how did you get to where you are? I know most recently you worked at ESPN, but tell us your path, so to speak, from the U of I to where you are.
When I first graduated, honestly, it was very difficult to find a job in this field. And I know a lot of people probably struggle with that as well. So I worked in Uber Chicago office for a little bit of time, but at the same time interned with the radio station in Chicago. From there, I honestly randomly applied to a position at ESPN and used a connection I had through college to get an application pulled. And that's how I ended up at ESPN. From there, coming here last year, I was on LinkedIn crazy. I was on there all the time. It's like one of the best networking platforms ever. I used that when I saw this position become available, reached out to an SVP who just so happens to have a wife who has the same name as me, and it stuck out, and I was able to get my app pulled. And from there, I landed here. So very grateful. Use LinkedIn, use the people you know, because that could be super helpful.
So you've been able to kind of keep your passion for sports, even though you're more in a marketing role at this point.
For sure. I think what people don't realize is how connected marketing and social media is. So while we are under the marketing umbrella, we're creating content that we want to pitch to sponsors and to brands so that they could put their name on it and they could back it. And with that, I get to do both. I get to be on the marketing front and the business side, but at the same time, creating content that I'm passionate about from the perspective of someone who looks like the players they're creating it for. So they definitely work hand in hand, creating content and the money side, and I get to do both.
Okay, let's move to Jolene Olson. Jolene, you're in the Kansas City area, is that right? And you work for Scenic Road. Tell us a little bit about your company, your job, and yourself.
Sure. Well, first of all, Scenic Road is based in Kansas City, but I run our satellite office in Chicago. So we are a video and content agency, and we do authentic storytelling for brands. And how that ties into my journalism background and the bachelor's degree that I got at U of I is I really honed my skills as a journalist in finding the way to make people care. You know, that's the very first question that we sort of learn is why does anyone care about this story? And then sort of translating that over to a brand. So now at Scenic Road, I'm vice president. I do all of our content strategy for our brands. I come up with creative concepts, and I also am key account manager for our major brands from Samsung and Walmart on down to smaller businesses that no one knows the name of. So we're a small agency, so I also wear many hats.
And Jolene, what did you do when you were in school? Did you do Daily Illini, radio station? Did you have activities that connected to media that you think helped your career?
I actually interned WICD. I didn't have time for DI. I would have loved to do that, but someone told me that I needed to get an internship, and I realized I couldn't do both. I actually paid my own way through college, so I had a job as well. So with my full-time school and work and the internship, I didn't really have a lot of extra time for additional activities, but that internship was absolutely critical in getting me my first job and moving on from there.
Okay, let me move on to our last but least guest, Caitlin Weaver. Caitlin joins us from Alaska. Whereabouts in Alaska are you at this point, Caitlin?
We're still in Anchorage.
And you still consider yourself an Illinois girl in Alaska, right?
I don't know. That Alaska residency has a lot of benefits.
So help us here with, you are currently with a social media coordinator for Thompson and Company Public Relations. What does that entail? And then give us a little bit of the history from the time you left the University of Illinois to where you are now.
All right. Well, I am definitely kind of the flip side of everyone else on this panel. I'm definitely still starting out in PR, but yeah, I don't think I'll ever go back to news now that I'm here. So I graduated with a bachelor's degree in agricultural communications 3 years ago. Then I like to say my high school sweetheart trapped me. We got married. He's active duty in the US Army. So they shipped us up to Alaska kind of last minute, kind of unexpectedly. And I was lucky enough, I got up here and got a job at, thank you, Ken. I got up here and got a job at a local Fox affiliate. I really enjoyed my time there. It was a really quick learning curve. It's a very interesting station, a small privately owned station that yeah, if anyone's ever worked for a small family-owned station, it can kind of go one of two ways. So I learned a lot. I got to do a lot of really cool stories. Anchorage is in a position where we got a lot of major market news in a really small market. So I met the first lady, I met the president, I met the vice president, kind of did it all, and then realized I didn't want to continue on with the station. And the Army had extended us here for another year. So I had a non-compete, and it kind of forced me over to PR. And I don't know that I would have been ready to make that jump if that hadn't been the situation. And now I have no regrets. I love my job. I love my team. I work again for a small agency like Jolene, and it's working with that small, tight-knit group. Like it's awesome. It feels like I'm working with GMI again, to be honest. So I'm a social media coordinator there, and what I do pretty much every day is I write social copy, find assets, create assets for several clients, a lot of clients. We do mostly tourism, so that's really fun. We do the whole state of Alaska's tourism campaign. We do the major tech company of Alaska because most of the lower 48 tech companies don't reach here, so we have our own. And it's just been a really fun learning experience. But yeah, most of what I do is create that social copy. I do a lot of deep diving into analytics and figuring out what it is that people actually want to hear about or want to see on their social feeds, and then kind of figure out how to translate that over into something that's going to perform well every day, 5 days a week for every client.
Let me ask how you think the basics of journalism play into your everyday job. And for students who are online watching, what's that mean? I mean, are they going to find things that they're learning in class or things that are doing at the DI or the radio station or Student U Do they use those in their real life job? Jolene, what do you think?
Yes, absolutely. From the basics of just really understanding your subject and asking all the tough questions. Sure, we're in, the PR and marketing side, but you really have to understand the other side if you're going to truly market. You have to address people's concerns and what's holding them back from a product, and then you have to understand what will make people care. All good storytelling is based on empathy and putting yourself in someone else's shoes. And I think you really get the skills to do that at U of I.
And Carla, I think in talking with you, not in the conference, but you have to deliver a different message to different audiences. Sometimes it's to the students, sometimes it's to the parents, sometimes it's to the community. How do you do all of that?
For me, a lot of it comes from listening first. So understanding where our students are coming from, where our parents are coming from, where the larger community is coming from, where our taxpayers who don't have kids, have never had kids, don't want to have kids, but they still support our schools. So we do a lot of listening. We do a lot of engagement. We get out into the community to see what's going on. And then we tell those stories. And I'm fortunate, I've got 8,000 students and 1,000 staff members. There are stories to tell for days. And we can relate those to the things that people are interested in. Right now, we're in a pandemic and all of our kids are now learning from home, and we've had to communicate internally like you wouldn't believe, because our staff's lives have been, upheaved, and we have to make sure we're meeting their needs. We're making sure that we're being empathetic to the situation they're in and the ask that we've made of them to educate. Our students' lives, the same thing, our parents. So really it's about listening to the community, understanding what they need, and then delivering the stories, delivering the information that they want to hear. And sometimes delivering the messages that they don't want to hear, but we have to tell. And certainly there's been quite a bit of that in the last couple of months, just making sure that we're getting the right information out. We're being transparent, we're being accurate, and we're really pulling the story in so that we can be empathetic to the needs of the people that we're working with.
Mario, you want to jump in there on how your journalism skills apply to your everyday job?
Sure. I think at the end of the day, when I'm kind of putting out a message out there, I'm just seeing it as this is a story I'm telling. Doesn't matter whether it's going throughout, in the form of a social post, newsletter, or if it is like an actual video that I'm putting together. It's telling a story, and you have to be able to understand, how do I tell the story in a way that, as Jolene kind of mentioned, that makes people care about that. It's, what I work in with our nonprofit is community health and well-being. That's a space where it's really easy to just get lost in data. It's really easy to just talk in so much jargon that the message that you're trying to deliver just goes over people's heads. You kind of just start to tune out because it's like, okay, you've just given me all this information. I don't know how to process that. What does that actually mean to me? And, you think about like when you interview someone and you kind of go back and you're listening to the tape, you have how much time that you were interviewing that person, and it's a fraction of what actually ends up, in your final product. So it's really understanding, how do I, you're going to use those journalism skills of learning, what's the best way to tell this story? What's the most important information? What's the factual information that they need to know? And how do I present this in a way that, one, they understand, and then two, that they care about and will actually act on it? So
we have a question from a student, recent graduate. Gavin, go ahead with your question.
It's hey everybody, thanks for doing this. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, my question is that I've spoken with a lot of people like throughout my undergrad years and even now with you guys who've crossed over from journalism to PR, and they seem to be really happy with it. And I'm wondering what you guys view as the advantages of having a job in PR instead of journalism, because to me it seems like there's more stability, but I'm also wondering what other big factors may be.
Robin, you want to start with that one?
I'll start for sure. I still kind of dip and dabble into the journalism side. And one thing that JP and Ken both taught me in school that I use to this day is definitely going over your work multiple times. Everything that I put out for the Celtics reaches millions of fans multiple times a day. And if there is a typo, a letter that's not capitalized that's supposed to be, that can cost us thousands, if not millions of dollars, because we do have sponsorships with different companies. So I get to do both the journalism and stay within the marketing or PR realm. For me, I do like to do both. And that's why I like this role so much, because there's opportunities for me to grow in the digital hosting space, being that a lot of what's happening now is going digital, especially with everything that's going on. But at the same time, I get to do the business side and learn about that. So for me, even though the team is big, our office and everyone that works there, it's small and it is close knit. So I'm able to go to this department and learn this, but also stay here in my group and learn everything I can here. So I'm given the opportunity to learn as much as possible.
Okay, Jolene, you want to try to answer that one?
Sure. There are a lot of reasons. First of all, I think anyone who goes into journalism has a genuine passion for it and a passion for storytelling. And I would be lying if I say I didn't ever miss it, especially when I watch broadcast news and I see someone royally screw it up. But that said, there are a lot of things that just aren't conducive to having a happy work-life balance. I have 3 children and it just got to the point where it just wasn't tenable. You can climb up the totem pole from one small market to the next market up the chain, but every time you do that, then you're back at the bottom and you're not getting vacation time, and it takes that much longer to get promotions. And sometimes the politics of any given organization are such that you have to move to another city to get that promotion, when really you were happy in the city you were in. You just wanted to move up a little bit. And so the constant moving at first was appealing because I'm a very adventurous person and I wanted to live all these different places in the country. And I guess I scratched that itch because I did get to move to several different markets. But after I had to work my 5th Christmas in a row, I just was like, oh man. And I worked Thanksgiving that year, hoping to get it off. It was tough. I was working overnights. I was overweight. I was just not happy. And the opportunity came along to take those same skills of storytelling and get to work 9 to 5 and have, real holidays off every year, and still get to travel and still get to tell impactful stories and have more creative control than I did really in journalism, and a little bit more time to spend on stories. In broadcast, it's, I think the shortest I ever went live was in 7 minutes from arriving on scene. And I mean, I can't imagine doing that today. Now I have weeks to prepare something. We work on a documentary piece for like a year. And so there are pluses and minuses to all of it. I think the storytelling passion is what keeps you happy in both arenas, but those are the reasons that I moved to the quote unquote dark side.
I've heard some people say that life on the other side, so to speak, is more proactive than reactive in daily journalism. Is that true, Caitlin?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, one of our, like you said, our big clients is the Travel Alaska. And we got a heads up what was coming. We knew that coronavirus was, eventually that there were going to be travel impacts. Again, and in the PR world, it still seems crazy because we still only got, 3 days to a week to really be like, okay, it's happening. Whereas we got to make that call. We were out ahead of it. We put out some really great messaging about, Alaska waiting for you. And then what felt like a week after that, even though I know it was only 2 days because we had done all this preparation, we're ready for it. Then journalists were like, oh no, what's happening? How do we do this? How do we talk about this? And it was really comforting for me to kind of get to sit in my chair and be like, I know all the things.
So what do you suggest for a student that goes, to hell with this daily journalism thing? It doesn't pay very well. Jobs are hard to get. It's got to be easier in the PR and communications field, right? Right? Sure it is. It's going to pay better, right? what do you suggest to them? How can they make themselves stand out, either in their resume or in clips or articles or a resume video, whatever they may send to apply? How do you make yourself stand out from that standpoint?
I can chime in there. What I found, and I recently just went through the hiring process to hire someone that would be in the shoes very similar to what our students and recent grads are in right now. And I can tell you what really attracted me to the candidates that I was looking at is that they could show me what they can do. And that might be that they worked on a student production like Good Morning Illini, and they can tell a good story. They can shoot a story. They can write something clearly, concisely, and make me care. That is really what you need to do when you're going out into the job world and trying to catch someone and say, yeah, hire me. For me, we wear so many different hats that seeing that versatility is really important. And I think an Illinois degree, if you're coming out with a journalism degree, is you have that versatility now. When I was in school, you were pigeonholed into print or broadcast or radio. Now you get to experience all of those things. And I think that's really a benefit to you coming out because you've got skills in all of those areas. So play up those experiences. If you were a part of PGU or the DI or Fighting Line or GMI or whatever it is that you did, or the class projects that you were a part of, show those to the people who are looking to hire you, because that really shows that you can do it. And that's really what I was looking for when I was looking to hire. And those are the things that stuck out to me.
Mario, what do you think about should students, what's the word? Should they show off their versatility in terms of their skills when they apply?
Well, absolutely. And then to your point, so I think one of the things that you're going to see if someone has been in a position for, let's say, 20, 25 years, obviously, yeah, they have the time put in over you. But if you're coming out of college saying, well, I know what, the platforms are that are being used now for marketing, I've been using these. You have that person that's been in the position, might be a little comfortable, says, well, nope, that's not for me. It's too much of a learning curve. I don't want to learn that. That is something that differentiates you from that person, that yes, they have the experience, but here, look, I have, dabbled in a little bit of everything. Where do you need me? I think that makes you that much more attractive when you can say like, okay, if you can start me here, and then you're working at a company and they see, oh, you also have this skill and you're able to do this. Okay, you've just added that much more value to yourself. And then obviously you're bringing value to the company. And kind of going back to the previous question about from journalism to kind of the marketing world, when I talk to current reporters here with like our local affiliates and they ask me, oh, so do you like, how's your life since you left local news? And it's interesting because like, I hate that question because like, okay, so for me, leaving local news was the best decision I made. I mean, I'm TV gave me a lot. It gave me great experiences. There's just so much valuable skills that you take from that you actually don't even realize until you leave TV. I met my partner there. So her and I have a daughter now. We knew that we wanted to have a family, and both of us working in TV, her working overnight, me working really early in the morning. I mean, we just knew that wasn't going to be conducive for having a family. But I think, what always scares me is that we're always going to need journalists who are good at their job. And I think that's why I'm always scared to say like, oh no, I love being outside of journalism, because we need people, especially more than ever, that are, finding the facts, that they're telling the stories accurately. I mean, and you think about right now with everyone being at home, everyone's just being consumed with so much information right now that it's coming from all directions. It's coming from everywhere. And if we don't have those reliable sources, if we don't have those trusted journalism backgrounds, I mean, it kind of puts into question everything we're seeing. So so that question always makes me nervous, because I guess I don't regret leaving local news, but there was just so much that I gained from it. I think one of the biggest things, and Julian, you kind of touched on this, is working under pressure and working on a deadline. It kind of becomes a joke when you leave TV news, because that's all you ever work under. I mean, so I remember, the first video project that I turned around for the nonprofit I'm working at now, I brought it into the office, had our executive director sit down and say, okay, are you guys ready to watch this video? And she was confused and just thought, okay, was this just what you have done so far? And I was like, no, this is the completed video. I mean, for me, that was just like, you gave me 2 days to put together a 2-minute video. Like, so that, I mean, it's just, again, it's something that I think when you're in news, you don't kind of realize that. You come out to a different environment and you realize that just working under pressure, juggling multiple projects is just something you were doing every day, kind of became the norm to you, and you just didn't realize it. So yes, glad I left local news, but I am so glad though that I did kind of go that route. Realized it wasn't for me, but then just was able to take so much with me from that though.
I've got a question from a student or an attendee online here. If you know you want to go into PR, is it still important to have an education in a wider variety of types of journalism? What education path would you recommend for someone who wants to go into PR? I'll leave that open to the crowd.
Oh, my degree is not in journalism. So I feel like I can chime in here. I actually did get my degree in agricultural communications. I grew up on a farm, so it just felt like a natural fit for me. Ended up getting there, realizing I did not want to go back to the farm and I did not want to do the farm report. So I've really just focused way more on the general communications aspect, PR, and journalism out of it. And what I can tell you is that I probably am more well prepared for my current job because of the skills I learned in my journalism classes than I think most of my mass communications classes. And I really mean that. And that's probably not what people want to hear. But I think it equipped me with, a lot more skills that I use every day. It's easy to learn how to read analytics. It's not easy to learn how to take those analytics and tell the story. And that's been the biggest learning curve for me, I think, is realizing that I am already ahead of that. And now I can kind of backtrack and figure out how to deep dive into that stuff that it takes skill to read and get through, but that anyone can do.
Yeah. Robin, would you also suggest a certain path or courses that students take?
In terms of degree, mine was in broadcast journalism. You actually don't need that to get into ESPN, to work for the Celtics or a sports team. You can have something as general as communication, and that will work well for you. It's all about your experience and what you can bring to the table. And I know everyone here mentioned that it's important to really show what you can bring to the table. And that was crucial for me in terms of standing out. Having a portfolio is ideal because you can show everything. You can show the posts that you've created, what they look like, analytics, how many people it's reached. And that is very important, but you don't need a specific degree. In terms of classes to take, definitely TV 1 and 2 help me. One-man banding is everything. The fact that I can go out by myself, even using just your phone. I know that you all hated when we used our phones back in the day, but the phones and the cameras now are crazy. You can do so much. So being able to go out, shoot, and tell a story on your own and bring that to someone and say, well, you don't even need 3 people to do it. I can do it, can set you apart from so many others. So TV 1, TV 2, take those classes seriously and really put your all into the packages that you are creating weekly.
So the Celtics didn't want you to know how to dunk before you came.
Oh, not some people that come here actually don't even like basketball. And that works in their favor because they aren't biased. They aren't coming in just a fan of the team. And a lot of people want to work for sports teams to be around the athletes or to say they work there and get the perks of free tickets. But if you can come in unbiased and still have a really good skill set, that'll set you apart from a lot of people.
Got another question from a student. Peyton Westner is a graduate student working on his master's degree. Peyton, go ahead.
Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for your time. I hope all of you are doing well. I wish you all the best on that front. My question really has to go with all your responsibilities in comparison to one another. They're similar, but they vary. So this is a question for each and every one of you. What is the most rewarding part of your position? Thank you so much.
The paycheck, we know that, right? Jolene, why don't we start with you?
I've always loved just the creative aspect at the heart of everything that I do. So the most rewarding thing for me is coming up with a creative idea that will get the brand's audience to pay attention and take an action. Any of us can take a paycheck, and that, that's valuable. That keeps the lights on, it keeps food in the kids' bellies. But to know that you made an impact for someone, it gives you ROI that you wouldn't necessarily get in journalism. If you're super lucky in journalism, you get an award. I did have a law introduced once, which I'm really proud of, but it didn't get to the floor. So that was really disappointing. That was when I worked with you, John, actually. And so it's just the opportunity to say, hey, I was able to get this nonprofit. I worked on with the VFW, and they had their most successful fundraising campaign ever 2 years ago. And to know that I helped do that. So I helped veterans, around the country get money for very challenging times. Some of them are, Walmart's not hurting in general. So sometimes I'm lifting brands, but it's just very satisfying to know that you came up with a creative idea that really made a difference in some way, in some tangible way.
Caitlin, what's the rewarding part of the job? You've only been at it a few months.
For me, it's that I've always known I was super interested in digital and video, photo, social creation. That was kind of always my favorite part of it. So I work in an agency that does a lot of traditional PR, and the digital team is really small. We're like less than a quarter of the team. There's just 5 of us. And for me, one of the most rewarding parts is whenever we have a client who's known for years the value of PR, but has maybe not understood the value of digital content switching over to social media. So whenever we can get a client and say, here's the things that we can do for you from the digital side, and here's how it will leverage your company, and you kind of get to help hold that client's hand and bring them into the new age. That's really exciting. It's really positive to see. And it's also, it's great to hear that feedback from the client that they're getting customer appreciation.
Carla, what do you think? Is there something that you go, man, I'm glad I did this because it's so rewarding and fulfilling?
For me, since I have, one client, the school district that I work for, it's a lot more focused. I don't have to worry about a whole bunch of clients and trying to make them happy. I get to focus on one thing that matters really the most to me, which is education. So in my work, I get to make a difference in our communities. In my previous school district that I worked for, I was able to run referendum campaigns that built 16 schools to educate kids in a community. You can go to bed at night and say, I did a good job because I did something good for kids. So I can use all of the skills I learned at Illinois, all the communication, all the strategic planning, storytelling, and really make a difference in my community. And I get to do that every day. So whether it's COVID-19 and we're making a difference because we're making education happen in these unusual circumstances, or we're building, schools, or we're instituting new curricula that's going to change the way kids learn, we're connecting them to alumni and people that can help them. I feel good because the work that I do makes a difference, and I can be passionate about it, and I can really focus on that work. So I would
Mario,
say
besides the fact that you don't have to go out and shoot VOSATs and sound bites and car wrecks and fires and high school basketball games, what's rewarding for you in this new job?
Well, so I will say, luckily, I am in a position where I am able to still shoot, edit. I have all that freedom to do that. So I feel like I got to do all the fun parts of local news, and then got to leave you're out there doing a live shot at 4 a.m, covering a shooting from the night before on a dark street that no one even knows where you're at. So I feel like I got the good parts out of that. For me, I think one of the most rewarding things is I feel like it's so easy to kind of overlook nonprofits, and there is so much incredible work that happens within nonprofits. The biggest issue that nonprofits end up facing is obviously there's always budget restraints. You were constantly just, fundraising to stay in operation. And with that, marketing communications doesn't really tend to make the top of the list most of the time. So you have all this great work that you're doing, and the community isn't aware of this. It's so easy that nonprofits, I think, just are thought of only, okay, this is a place I can give money, but the value that they bring to the community really gets lost. So I think the fact that the work that we do, having a direct impact in the community, being able to tell that story to the community, and then hearing back from them when we get, a random message, a random email from someone that has never worked with us and is just like, thank you for the work that you did in opening up this trail so that it becomes a year-round trail. Like, my 87-year-old grandpa now walks that every morning, especially during the winter because you're plowing it. I think these are just all little things that, in local news and journalism, you do your story, you turn it in, you go to bed, you wake up, and you do it all over again. So you're making a difference because you're sharing that story, you're getting, that important information out. but you sometimes don't really recognize it. Whereas now in the marketing world, I think it's much easier to see the impact you can do. And yeah, so like I said, I think for me, just the most rewarding part is just being able to tell the story of our nonprofit's mission, and I mean, really highlight the incredible work that is actually impacting our community's lives every day.
Okay, I'm going to take you back to your senior year, and you're about to walk out the door with your degree. We have a question from student attendee Sarah O'Byrne. Sarah, go ahead with your question.
Hi, yeah, my question is, I'm graduating and we're all looking for entry-level jobs, our first job out. Since companies aren't really hiring right now, would going back and maybe getting a master's in marketing or communications, would that be beneficial? Or do you think that it's just a waiting game and the job market will bounce back for PR?
Okay, let me turn to you, Carla. What do you think?
That's a tough one. I've got a daughter who's a graduating senior from college right now, and we've had this conversation. What do? Do you try to get a job and make a go of it? Do you go back to school? For her, she chose to go back to school and get her master's because it'll be the most beneficial for the field that she's in. I can see benefits to both sides. So I can see if you can find that job and you can find somewhere, you can make yourself usable. Organizations need to communicate right now, probably more than they ever have. So those skills are really important to organizations right now. So you could probably find your way somewhere. Might not be a completely paid full-time job. It might be as a consultant. It might be an internship. It might be something to get you experience. There's certainly those opportunities, and we will recover from this. I mean, there are ups and downs, and there are things that that are not great in the economy, but we will come back. So I think you need to do kind of some soul searching for yourself and make that decision based on where you think you need to be. But I think certainly can see there are benefits to both sides. Certainly can't hurt to go get more education. I'm, as a supporter of education, always in support of that. But you just got to look and see if there's an opportunity that you can get to. Go for it. Education is always a good thing to rely on, as long as you can afford it, and you're not going to have to pay for that down the long run in the end.
Jolene, you have a master's degree, right, in public affairs reporting. Would you suggest, now that you're in a different role than daily journalism, does it make sense to go back and get a communications or marketing degree?
I think for me, it definitely did. And that's because part of the program at University of Illinois at Springfield in public affairs is a 6-month internship. And what that did was, when I graduated, I had real hands-on work. I had a resume tape. I had a very strong portfolio that I could share. As everyone's been saying all day, it's all about showing the diversity of your skill set. And while U of I gave me the platform and gave me the structural material that I needed to build off of, I still didn't have quite the portfolio that I really needed to get a job at that time. And now it's even more challenging than ever. To answer her question, it really depends on where you want to go to school. School's much more expensive now, and I'm a very frugal person. So I would have to carefully weigh, what do you want to do? Will a more advanced degree get you there, and at what cost? For me, the U of I program, University of Illinois at Springfield, was excellent because it was a 15-month program. It was inexpensive. I got the 6-month internship, and I got a job. I got a job offer the second or third week of my internship. So I think every situation is different, but carefully look at where you want to go. Don't go to school just for school's sake. Sorry, Carla. I do value education very, very much, but don't go just out of fear. Go somewhere that's very specific to the skill set that you want, and then actively pursue diversifying your skill set to set the stage for when you graduate.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say from my standpoint, I'm not sure a master's degree gets you hired faster or gets you more money when you do get hired. Is that true?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I didn't make more money. It just got me the job, like got me the first job. And I wouldn't say it's added even today. It probably hasn't added to my salary, but getting that first job and getting that experience is critical, and nothing else would have happened
Yeah.
probably.
We have another question from a student, as we've only got a few minutes left. Gabby is on the line. Gabby Vasquez. Gabby, go ahead.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, so I was just kind of curious. So, I'm obviously a journalism major, and I know that like we can experience a lot of negative backlash just based off of some of the pieces that we write. If somebody doesn't agree with what we do, it's always, oh, you're this, you're that. So from, a PR standpoint, and for those of you who still like kind of use journalism with what you're doing in PR, have you experienced any negative backlash similar to that? How do you go about dealing with it? And yeah.
That's a tough one. It is a pretty angry environment out there these days, no matter what side of whatever issue you're on. Do you see that in the PR field? Caitlin, do you see it?
Yeah. And again, working in an agency, it's kind of some clients get it way worse than others, and they don't necessarily know that there's a whole agency behind that marketing strategy. And sometimes people just want to pick a bone to pick a bone. I would say the benefit of being with in PR or with an agency or with your own team when this happens is you're not alone. So it's a little different. So when someone starts spewing hate, one, you have to remember that it's not you anymore. It's not your face out there. So that always helps give it a little extra barrier, even though it still feels personal to you. But two, then the really good thing is it's not just you. There's a whole team that's reviewing your content. I don't know, maybe Carla, because she's just Carla, but I don't know for the rest of us that a piece of work that we put out ever doesn't get reviewed by someone else before it goes out. So it's always really important to remember it's not just you. It's not you, period. And that there are people in the world right now who just need an outlet to spew, and I wish they would find something other than social media to do it on, and they don't understand that there's faces behind vector logos. But you just get through it as a team. You have other people to rely on. They're there to lift you up, and someone else thought it was great and let you post it. So
Robin, is the angry environment show up in your daily life at all at work?
Oh, for sure. People hate us because we win. They hate us when we lose. They hate us just because we have a rivalry with the Lakers. They just hate us. And they make it known, especially on these social media accounts. They have no problem vocalizing any way they feel, but I don't take that personally. And sometimes I can understand it being difficult because some people do know I am one of the people that run the social media account, and they'll come find me to directly come to with a comment. But you just kind of have to brush that stuff off and realize, like Kaylin said, they just need an outlet, and we just so happen to be the punching bags. But don't take any of it personally because it's not you, it's them.
Yeah. Mario, we had a question from somebody wanting to know, how has COVID-19 changed what you do on a daily basis, besides the fact you're probably at home?
Right. Yep. So yeah, fortunately, I am able to work from home. So the nonprofit that I work with, so again, we work in community health and well-being, and a lot of our work is really trying to change systems. So we don't work in tons of programs. The idea being that if we can make the change at a county level and that impacts everyone versus we're going to do a program that helps, 25 kids this day. And so we have really built a huge network of partners where we work with a lot of other nonprofits to really get stuff done here in the community and really make an impact. So right now, I guess you could say we are not on the ground. We are not a direct service provider. But we do work with a lot of organizations that are providing, whether that's food, housing resources, bathroom and cleaning supplies, financial assistance. So what we're seeing right now is that these direct service nonprofits are just overwhelmed. I mean, the need is so great, and they are doing their best to address those needs. And while they're doing that, though, there are just, I guess, larger problems that they know exist that they can't tackle. So that's when our nonprofit can come in and step in and really kind of take over some of that capacity that they don't have, and we can take it over. So for us, we are still able to work from home. It's a lot of just bringing the right people together, figuring out what the problem is, and then us kind of going forward and saying, okay, we're going to help you. This is what we can do, whether that's writing a grant to bring money in, just whatever role it is. Because we are, again, at home, not doing the direct service, we just had to adapt, kind of pivot. Okay, what does this look like now? And, fortunately, we are able to do that. So, so in terms of COVID-19, the biggest effect it's had is just having us to work from home. We, I guess, are lucky enough that we don't have to answer that daily need that so many other nonprofits are doing right now.
Carla, obviously, schools are greatly affected by this crisis pandemic. Have you been doing more communication since COVID? Less communication? Is your message different? Or I can't imagine you went, oh, let's have a planning meeting to decide how to talk about COVID.
Well, for me, really, it's communicating. It feels like 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because there are so many things coming down that we need to react to. In schools, we need to look at what the governor is saying and what guidelines they're putting in place, what Illinois Department of Public Health is putting in place, what the Illinois State Board of Education is putting in place. So it's really tying into those government relations that we have to look at what's happening there. So now our messaging is responding to that. We've really picked 3 key messages as the cornerstone of what we're saying in this time. And it's that we're going to respond with compassion, we're going to respond with flexibility, and we're going to continue the passion for our students and our staff. And that really is the underlying message through anything that we put out. And really any messaging, whether it's a letter from the superintendent, it's social media posts, it's our communications with local leaders, with parents who are they're calling and they're angry, and people's lives are just totally flipped upside down. Yeah. And I've really found that social media, while we've had a very strong social media presence and a very spread out presence where we've allowed teachers and staff and coaches and teams to have their own kind of decentralized social media presence, has really helped us, because now that's the way we're continuing to engage our community. We're continuing to build school spirit. We're keeping kids engaged and learning because their coaches are pushing things out to them on social media, because that's the relationship they have. Messages coming from the district's social media accounts don't resonate as well as those from the individual staff members. So really we're tapping into that in a huge way right now to keep kids engaged, to keep them learning, and move that message forward.
Thank you very much to all of you as not only alum panelists. You've contributed a lot today, and I'm sure the class of 2020 that's watching, and recent graduates who may be watching online or on the call, appreciate your comments. So personal thanks from me, but thanks to all of us who have been planning to put this together, from Ken Erdy, from Mitch Kazel, and the people behind the scene punching the buttons that make us all look good out in front. We all look good today, right? Hey, thank you so much. And there's always a cold drink waiting for you at Murphy's when you get back to campus. See you later.
Great, JP. Thanks.
Thanks, JP.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.